Chapter 1396. The inheritance was only one of the benefits. It included the martial arts skills and experience of a monarch. Another benefit was the power of rules. Rules were more precious than inheritances. However, Qin Hao didn't care. Rules were ineffective under the power of laws. He had the power of laws, so why should he care about rules? There was no harm in giving it to Zhou Wuq and Zhou Wudao. Am I that weak? Zhou Wudao held an opposing opinion, muttered a sentence, and stepped forward. His soul power surged. Black crows circled around him, and Tao Tai appeared behind him. His aura skyrocketed. However, his expression was solemn. With the emperor statue's pressure, Zhou Wudao didn't dare to be careless. After all, Zhang Yi had failed, and he wasn't much stronger than Zhang Yi. Swoosh! The emperor statue's eyes flickered. A ray of starlight flew out from the light ball in its palm. In the blink of an eye, the light condensed into a meteor and smashed down. The space shook. The terrifying emperor's aura covered the top of his head. The monstrous pressure was even more terrifying than that of a 9-star great emperor. Zhou Wudao's legs trembled. At this moment, he deeply understood Zhang Yi's feelings. Strong, too strong. Even a simple emperor statue's technique made people feel like they were about to be destroyed. They were completely powerless to resist. I give up, Zhou Wudao shouted calmly and directly. Before the meteor got close, he was already drenched in cold sweat. He was very clear that even if he opened his 2 souls and fought with his life on the line, it would be useless. Although the emperor statue wouldn't really take his life, the result of failure was destined. It was better to just give up than to be tortured. Whoosh! The flying meteor disappeared. The emperor's aura that swept through the space was withdrawn. It seemed that Zhou Wudao's action stunned the emperor's statue. It said with a teasing tone, "Junior, you're a little interesting. Junior's ability is limited. I know I'm not worthy of Senior's inheritance." Zhou Wudao scratched his head embarrassedly. This was the second time he had retreated without a fight. It was the first time he faced Qin Hao. It seemed that he was right. He was indeed weak. How much are you struggling? So many people are watching. Qin Hao was speechless. Zhou Wuq saw this and retreated a few steps to avoid misunderstandings that he was with Zhou Wudao. Too strong. I really can't. Zhou Wudao's expression was helpless. If you have the ability, knowing when to advance and retreat. Although I'm not fused with you, you can rely on yourself to enter the Emperor realm. The Emperor statue transmitted its voice. These words of encouragement immediately gave Zhou Wudao a lot of strength. What is the Emperor of Swords? Junior doesn't know, so I'll use my sword to ask Senior. Next, the head walked towards the Emperor statue. The Sword Emperor was the pinnacle of swordsmanship, an existence that stood at the pinnacle of the Sword Tao. Then why were there still differences in strength among the Sword Emperors of the continent? Based on what he had seen since he was young, the southern region's Sword Emperor's sword was the strongest. Then what is the Emperor? The Emperor statue seemed to be talking to itself. Its eyes flickered and a ray of starlight flew out. The Emperor's aura surged and engulfed Zhou Wuq. At this moment, everyone watched carefully. Zhou Wuq of the southern region was born in the family of the Sword Emperor. He had been nurtured by the Sword Emperor since he was young. Among the younger generation of the southern region, he was famous. Everyone praised him. Zhou Wuq was also proven at the Royal Road. His strength was obvious to all. Even compared to Zhang Yi and Zhou Wudao, he was more outstanding. But what he faced was an emperor statue. Zhang Yi was crushed by the emperor statue in one blow. Zhou Wudao was afraid of the battle. Everyone wanted to see how many steps the successor of the Sword Emperor of the southern region could take against the emperor statue and whether he could take the inheritance. Boom, boom, boom. The meteor smashed down. The terrifying emperor's aura blasted out. Zhou Wuq burst out with dazzling sword light. The light under his feet bloomed like a lotus. Every petal was a ray of sword will, sharp and pure. The sword will overlapped, and the sword light flew out. It came into contact with the meteor in the void and pierced through it. The powerful meteor was disintegrated and melted under Zhou Wuq's sword will. It was torn into pieces and could not gather again. What a strong guy. Amazing. Zhang Yi and Zhou Wudao exclaimed at the same time. Qin Hao nodded. Shou Wu's sword had the emperor's will. It seemed that he really understood what was weak. Therefore, in Shou Wu's eyes, there was no limit. What is the emperor in the sword? He asked, wanting an answer. Shou Wu shattered the meteor and continued forward. 1 step, 2 steps, 10 steps in a row. He did not want to become an emperor, nor did he want the inheritance. He only wanted to know what was the emperor in the sword, and who was the emperor. The emperor's statue did not reply. A look of admiration flashed in its eyes. Next, an even more violent starlight shot out. 1 turned into 2, 2 turned into 3, 3 turned into 10,000. In an instant, the void was filled with starlight. It was like a meteor shower, majestic and shocking, directly striking at one's heart. This scene caused Zhang Yi's expression to change drastically. No one knew better than him how powerful the starlight was. One starlight forced him to retreat pathetically. Who could withstand tens of thousands of them? However, there was no fear on Shou Wu's face. His gaze was resolute, like his sword and his conviction. He raised his palms and slowly closed them above his head. Following this, the sword light under his feet also closed like a flower, enveloping his entire person. At this moment, Shou Wu seemed to have transformed into a peerless divine sword. His palms slashed towards the sky. Endless sword chi gushed out from his palms, piercing through the sky and shattering all the stars in the sky. What is an emperor in the sword? He asked and continued forward. Everyone was shocked by the scene before them. What is an emperor? The emperor's statue said calmly. The flickering light in its eyes became even more intense. A platinum-colored light flowed around its body, giving people a feeling of flesh and blood. It was as if it had come alive, filled with the majestic aura of an emperor. Everyone felt at the same time that there was a peerless emperor sitting on the throne. The emperor's statue underwent a qualitative change. The light ball in its palm emitted a platinum-colored light. A ray of starlight shot out, but this time it did not turn into a huge meteor. Instead, it was like an incomparably sharp sword chi, piercing towards Shou Wu's forehead. Sword chi, platinum-colored sword chi. It was obvious that Shou Wu's outstanding performance had caused the emperor's statue to be serious. When Zhang Yi and Zhou Wudao saw this, they sighed, ashamed of their inferiority. The way they looked at Shou Wu also changed. When they were on the path to the Emperor realm, they saw Shou Wu as the same kind of person. Although he was outstanding, they were not convinced. At this moment, their expressions were filled with a trace of respect. Sword, Shou Wu muttered. He stretched his finger forward. His sword finger was incomparably sharp. Golden flames swayed around his body like flames. A tyrannical power that was completely different from soul power surged out. Under the shroud of this power, it was as if everything in the world had to abide by its rules and could be pierced through. At this moment, Shou Wu was incomparably magnificent. The power of rules. How is this possible? Zhang Yi and Zhou Wudao widened their eyes. The power of rules was above the will of the emperor. It was Emperor Yuan's true trump card. Once the rules were used, life and death were decided. The reason why Emperor Yuan was strong was mainly because of the power of rules. However, this power actually appeared on Shou Wu. He was only at the second level of the Emperor realm. Zhang Yi and Zhou Wudao's worldview was completely overturned. So that's what Shou Wu is relying on. This is the capital that allowed him to laugh proudly in the southern region. He was actually born with the power of rules. No wonder, no wonder. Ning Tianqing looked excited. He clenched his fists secretly, causing them to tremble slightly. His worldview was slightly higher than Zhou Wudao and Zhang Yi. Naturally, he could see that Shou Wu was born with the power of rules. This was enough to prove why the world praised the nephew of the southern region's sword emperor. He was on one level, and others were on another level. Under the power of rules, how could mortal martial artists resist? Not to mention ordinary martial artists. Even Essence Soul Realm geniuses would probably be unable to withstand a single blow. Shou Wu was born to be a peerless powerhouse. It's a pity that he will still lose against me. Excited, Ning Tianxing's lips curled into an incomparably confident smile. He was too lonely. He thought that, in this generation, not to mention the southern region, no one in the entire continent would be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with him. However, there was Qingji Han in the East Continent. Her spiritual power was so strong that she could decide the life and death of others with a single thought. Now, Shouwuk was born with the power of rules of swordsmanship. He was a good opponent. Ning Tianxing decided that if he had the chance, he would definitely spar with him. Of course, if Shouwuk was willing to be used by him and assist him in conquering the world, it would be even better. As they spoke, Shouwuk's ultimate sword strike, which was unleashed by the power of rules, collided with the Emperor's statue's starlight. There was no magnificent visual effect. When the two collided, the outcome was immediately determined. The sword light of rules directly broke, exploded, and dissipated into nothingness. The platinum starlight, however, flashed and disappeared between Shouwuk's brows. It was fast and unstoppable. Shouwuk's forward steps instantly stopped. He groaned. His white robes were torn, and his hair fluttered messily. As if he had lost all his strength, he sat down on the ground. Was this the failure? Zhang Yi and Zhou Wudao looked at each other, their eyes full of regret. Even someone as strong as Shouwuk, who was born with the power of rules, could not break the Emperor's statue's spell and obtain its recognition. Among the remaining people, who could break through this obstacle? Difficult. Too difficult. There was probably no hope. Junior, what's your name? The platinum brilliance circulating around his body disappeared, and the Emperor's statue let out a surprised voice. Southern Region Sword Sect, Shouwuk. Shouwuk answered weakly. Although he stopped, there was not a trace of disappointment on his face. On the contrary, he was a little nervous, and his tone was full of respect for the Emperor's statue. Wuk, good name. The Emperor's statue laughed. Your sword heart is pure, and your talent is extraordinary. In tens of thousands of years, you're the first to withstand my 3 attacks and walk 10 steps away. I did not expect you to be born with the power of rules. You are truly a powerhouse destined by the heavens. Born with the power of rules, destined by the heavens. This sentence was not wrong at all. No one had any objections. Shouwuk smiled faintly. In fact, he was tired of hearing this. The Southern Region's Sword Emperor had said this to him on the first day he could remember. Unfortunately, I am not proficient in the way of the sword and cannot give you an accurate answer. But I think you already have the answer in your heart. What is the Emperor of the Sword? This sentence, when used on you, is the best proof. The Emperor of the Sword will be whatever you reach in the end. Wuk, your future is boundless. The mortal world is too small. Just now, I lent you a sword to help you ascend. From these words, it was not difficult to see that the Emperor's statue valued Shouwuk very much. Unfortunately, his inheritance was not compatible with the Sword Emperor's successor. Even if he obtained it, he would not be able to fully utilize its power. It was really a pity. However, when these words were heard by everyone, they could not control the shock in their hearts. It was like waves rolling through the 9 heavens. The mortal world, for Shouwuk, was too small. In the future, he would become a god. Chapter 1397. The Great Emperor was the strongest, and the 9-star Great Emperor was the ruler. There were less than 100 people in the mortal world who were lucky enough to experience the Great Emperor's tribulation. And the Great Emperor was the supreme existence. The Great Emperor's statue faintly predicted that Shouwuk had the qualifications to become a god, surpassing the Great Emperor. How could this not shake people's hearts? Even Qin Hao was shocked after hearing this. But in other words, the Divine Palace powerhouse was only at the Great Emperor level. How could he be qualified to say that Shouwuk had become a god? Unless the Great Emperor statue reached the divine level, then this conclusion could be drawn. In history, there was only one person in the Divine Palace who had become a god. Could the Great Emperor statue in front of them be the peerless genius who had flown into the divine world? This was a lot of information. In any case, The gazes of the geniuses became different when they looked at the great emperor statue again. Perhaps the inheritance contained not only Dili, but also a trace of the way to become a god. Ning Tianxing's eyes were burning, and his possessiveness was on the verge of bursting out. "Thank you for the sword, senior." Showuk knelt on the ground. His rule sword was broken by the great emperor statue, and the star sword pierced into his forehead, but brought with it precious martial arts concepts. Although the great emperor claimed that he was not good at swordsmanship, he had seen many great sword emperors. The magnificence of those great sword emperors was enough for Showuk to benefit infinitely. This time, he did not receive the inheritance, but he had a great opportunity. Junior is not talented, but I am willing to prove my way to the great emperor. Ning Tianxing sensed that Showuk's sword will have become stronger. Breaking through to the next realm might happen in a moment. A genius with the qualifications to become a god was sitting in front of him, and it made him feel a strong sense of crisis. The great emperor's statue did not respond. In the next moment, Ning Tianxing stepped forward and the golden aura rose. His cultivation of the third tier of the emperor realm erupted. This was the power he had obtained when he underwent the great emperor's tribulation. Whoosh! Starlight flew in front of him, and it turned into a meteorite, descending with the might of the great emperor. A terrifying pressure spread out, and the space was suffocating once again. Ning Tianxing's clothes fluttered in the wind, but his expression was incomparably calm. Since Showuk could withstand the pressure of 3 emperor statues and take 10 steps, he could naturally do the same. Moreover, he would surpass Showuk because he was stronger than Showuk. So what if he was born with the Sword Dao rules? Even if he hadn't broken through to the immortal emperor realm, no one could shake him. Whoosh! The golden scissors source spirit appeared behind his back, emitting a sharp glow. This was the power of the Ning family's bloodline. As the meteor came crashing down, Ning Tianxing controlled the golden scissors to fly away, leaving behind an afterimage in the air. There was a deafening explosion as the meteor was pierced through. Ning Tianxing was like an emperor as he moved forward, unstoppable. Another ruthless person. Zhanya was also moved. Ning Tianxing's imposing manner did not lose out to Showuk. However, it was not easy for him to take more than 10 steps. There are thousands of geniuses in the continent, but I have never met a good opponent who can make me go all out. Life is full of regrets and loneliness. I hope that Senior won't hold back. Ning Tianxing spoke boldly. He looked at Qingji Han, his eyes filled with admiration. Showuk was strong, his own level. Next, he would break the other party's record and let the first princess of the East Continent see what it meant to be one's own level, not a title that was touted by others. Suppress a generation in the southern region? However, Qin Hao is the same as Showuk. Neither of them was worthy. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Just like before, the emperor statues flickered with starlight. Endless light intertwined, forming a spectacular meteor shower. The terrifying power seemed to be able to crush space and destroy everything. Ning Tianxing stood under the 1,000-meteor shower, but he was still as confident as before. An even more powerful soul power surged. His Guqin spirit bloomed, and his temperament changed. He played the Guqin with both hands, and his spirit will seem to merge with the Guqin spirit. He was like the incarnation of the Guqin Emperor, peerless and wild. The strings under his palms danced, emitting a sonorous melody full of magical power. This melody not only distorted space, but also made everyone's heartbeat faster. It was as if Ning Tianxing's figure appeared in everyone's minds. His aura affected the state of mind of all the geniuses at the same level. In the void, Ning Tianxing's aura was also filled. Strands of sound intertwined under his palms, forming a large net that blocked the falling meteor shower. The sound threads emitted a dazzling light, looking tough and sharp. They could cut through all obstacles. The falling meteor shower was blocked by the sound net, like dust falling into a spider's web, annihilated without a trace. His own level, Ning Tianxing withstood the second emperor's aura. He took a few more steps and was about to reach Showuk's position. He sneered. The successor of the southern region's Sword Emperor was his own level. What could he, the Tianhang Crown Prince, do? I have never acknowledged my own level, Shouwuk said calmly. Ning Tianxing was indeed very strong. His control of music was far above Changhelou's. The music he played even affected Shouwuk. However, withstanding the third emperor's aura was difficult. Moreover, Shouwuk had never thought of comparing himself with Ning Tianxing. No, you were born with the rules of Sword Dao. You are indeed worthy of your own level, provided that I do not make a move. But now I am a level. Ning Tianxing walked towards Shouwuk, intending to surpass him. In front of the emperor's statue, all the geniuses would naturally look up to him. Qingji Han would also fall in love with his talent. More importantly, he wanted to obtain the inheritance and become the second god of the divine wilderness continent. This guy is very arrogant. Do you have any thoughts? Zhou Wudao did not like Crown Prince Ningwu. He nudged Qin Hao with his shoulder. Shouwuk stopped. Among the remaining people, only Qin Hao had a chance to fight. Qin Hao's talent was indeed terrifying. It was not an exaggeration to call him abnormal. However, Zhou Wudao believed that the chances of obtaining the inheritance were not high. It should not be difficult to suppress Ning Tianxing. Not interested, Qin Hao said softly. Ning Tianxing's ability was indeed amazing. Whether it was his bloodline, origin spirit, or Guqin spirit, they were all extraordinary. In terms of Guqin spirit alone, Changhelou was not on the same level as him. Emotian's Guqin Dao was also somewhat inferior to his. However, Qin Hao did not come here to compete with Ning Tianxing. Then again, this new crown Prince Ning Wu was indeed a little arrogant. Qin Hao's previous impression of him was that he was generous, benevolent, and magnanimous. He had the demeanor of a ruler and was worthy of being friends with. Today, Ning Tianxing had completely changed Qin Hao's impression of him. He had become arrogant and unruly. Could it be because of Qingji Han? Qin Hao silently looked over. The first princess of the East Continent was unmatched in terms of appearance, figure, and status. It could be said that she had reached the pinnacle of women. Ning Tianxing had changed his usual behavior. It was very likely that he wanted to prove his strength in front of her. However, this had nothing to do with Qin Hao. Xiao Han was enough for him. Zhou Wudao sighed. Ever since Qin Hao became a married man, he had become depraved. He had become unambitious and had lost his masculinity. He was ashamed to be associated with Zhou Wudao. I, Ning Tianxing, have never been moved by any woman. A man should look down on the world and dominate everything. Women are just vassals, pushing between the strong. How can conquering a woman's heart compare to conquering thousands of men? However, the moment I met the princess, I realized that I was wrong, very wrong. The princess's beauty is unparalleled and does not lose to any man in the world. Perhaps I should change my words. All other women in the world are just vassals, except for the princess. If I can accompany you for the rest of my life, how fortunate would that be? Just as he was facing the third wave of Emperor's aura, Ning Tianxing suddenly turned and smiled at Qingji Han. Qingji, if Tianxing obtains the inheritance, will he be willing to hold my hand? Was this a confession? Everyone was stunned, including Qingji Han herself. In the East Continent, no one dared to call her by her name. Ning Tianxing, who came from the small southern mountain ranges Ningwu, actually dared to speak to her without thinking. In the next moment, Qingji Han was not the only one who was angry. Xiao Han immediately frowned. All women in the world were vassals, except for Qingji Han. Did this include her? Although Qin Hao was dissatisfied, he knew that Ning Tianxing must have done this on purpose to win Qingji Han's heart. It was understandable for a man to say some silly things when pursuing a woman. Ha ha! Zhou Wudao laughed loudly and pointed at Ning Tianxing. You have a problem. Are women to be conquered? What conquering thousands of men in the world? You might as well find a man to reproduce with. Oh, I understand. It's probably because Qingji Han is wearing men's clothing that you have a good impression of her. That's why you like her. But there's one thing. You can flirt with girls, but don't insult other women. All women in the world were vassals, including Zhou Wudao's mother. How could he not be angry? At this moment, even Zhang Yi and Shouwuk could not help but frown. Crown Prince Ning Wu looked like he had both good looks and good character, but his thoughts were too extreme and narrow. Did I say anything wrong? Ning Tianxing did not care about what others thought. He asked, "Who here can defeat me? And who can defeat Qingji? Wait until you withstand the third wave of Emperor's might." Shou Wu's expression turned cold. "You don't agree? I will prove it to you, but I still say the same thing. No woman here can compare to Qingji." Ning Tianxing seemed to have thought of something. He pointed at Xiao Han. "Princess Jingyue's ability is probably not on the same level as Qingji. Elder brother Tianxing, you've gone too far." Qin Hao's expression darkened. He had never compared Xiao Han to other women. In Qin Hao's eyes, there was no comparison at all. Naturally, Ning Tianxing did not have the right to speak. Qingji Han was originally quite angry, but when she saw everyone arguing, she was amused. Moreover, it seemed that no one in the East Continent dared to be so frank with her in public. She said, Okay. If you want to impress me, you have to withstand the third wave of Emperor's might first." "It's not just the third wave of Emperor's might. I said that I would get the inheritance for you to see." Ning Tianxing walked straight to Shou Wu's position. When everyone refuted him, he used his strength to shut everyone up. At this moment, an intense platinum light flowed around the Emperor's statue. It was as if the Emperor's might had arrived in person. Within the Emperor's light ball, a platinum palm chi struck out. It was as loud as thunder, trying to suppress Ning Tianxing's arrogance. Ning Tianxing was suppressed by the Emperor's might. He suddenly stopped moving forward. The palm energy was so intense that it almost penetrated his body. An unprecedented sense of danger made his body and mind tremble. At this point, he finally understood the pressure of Shou Wu. It was no wonder that his innate rule of sword Dao was also destroyed. It was because the third wave of Emperor's might was a real attack. With Ning Tianxing's current cultivation, he could not withstand it even if he used both of his souls. However, he did not retreat. He remained calm, as usual. Soul light appeared behind him. Between the bloodline golden scissors and the Guqin spirit, another soul appeared. The third, origin soul. As the soul light flickered, an illusory beast appeared. Everyone could faintly see the illusory beast's 9 tails swaying. 9-life phantom fox. Qin Hao's heart trembled. He was quite surprised. When he opened his red lotus fiery pupil, he saw Ning Tianxing's third soul clearly. It was indeed a 9-life phantom fox. This kind of origin soul was rare. It was no wonder that Ning Tianxing was so arrogant. Chapter 1398. 9 lives, 9 kills. The power of the Source Soul was mysterious and unfathomable. Anything in the world could be a Source Soul. Some martial artists had strong ancestors with tyrannical bloodlines. Under the influence of their bloodlines, their descendants had a chance to awaken their soul power. Some martial artists were born with a Source Soul. In addition, there were some martial artists who, because of some lucky chance, were born with a Source Soul. For example, Qin Hao. At Duanlongya, his body was destroyed, and he refined the red lotus fire as his soul. However, no matter how many Source Souls one had, it did not determine one's strength. The number of Source Souls could not change the strength of one's soul power. This was because soul power needed to be cultivated and was related to one's realm. The higher one's realm, the stronger their soul power. Another point was that the higher the grade of a martial artist's Source Soul, the stronger their soul power. An ordinary person's soul fire could not compare to the red lotus tyrannical flame. Therefore, Qin Hao had the red lotus tyrannical flame, so his soul power was naturally stronger than ordinary flames. Ning Tianxing had 3 Source Souls, so there were naturally benefits. For example, his ability to fight was strong. A metal-attributed martial artist would be at a disadvantage against a fire-attributed martial artist. Of the 5 elements, fire suppressed metal and wood. However, if a metal-attributed martial artist had a second Source Soul, the water soul, then the result of the fight would be different. This was the advantage of Source Souls. The more types there were, the stronger the adaptability. However, it could not change a martial artist's soul power. Although Ning Tianxing's soul power had not increased, it was enough to summon the 9 lives phantom fox. Looking at the snow-white, 9-tailed phantom fox in the air, Qin Hao's expression was very solemn. As the name implied, the 9 lives phantom fox had 9 lives. Once danger came, a martial artist could release the power of the 9 lives phantom fox and save their life 9 times in an extremely short period of time. They would only die when facing the 10th fatal attack. It was a heaven-defying existence. However, this kind of source soul was extremely rare even in the Fox clan's royal bloodline. There had not been one in dozens of generations. In Qin Hao's previous life, he had only seen a 5 lives phantom fox. He had spent a lot of effort to kill it, so it was impossible for it to appear on a human. Ning Tianxing was indeed not simple. Due to the influence of his bloodline, it was impossible for a normal phantom fox to appear in a human. It seemed that he had more than one identity. 9 lives phantom fox, isn't that too strange? Zhou Wudao was extremely shocked. He clearly knew how difficult it was to deal with this kind of origin spirit. Although the phantom fox's attacks were weak, it had 9 tails and 9 lives. When martial artists fought, life and death could happen in an instant. In that instant, his opponent had 9 lives. One could imagine what the consequences would be. Since things have come to this point, there's no need to hide it anymore. My mother is the empress who supports the Phantom Fox clan, Ning Tianxing said proudly with his back facing the crowd. Under the influence of the third soul, although he did not absorb the soul into his body, his temperament and appearance had undergone subtle changes. Looking from behind, Ning Tianxing's long black hair was gradually covered with a layer of snow, as delicate and soft as fox fur. It could be imagined that he, who was already very handsome, would be even more handsome now. 9 lives phantom fox. Qing Jihan's beautiful eyes narrowed. This source spirit was indeed extraordinary. Qingji, watch how I break the power of the third emperor statue. The platinum palm that symbolized the level of Emperor Yuan slammed down. Ning Tianxing let out a low moan and let out a fox-like cry. The void phantom fox scattered a sacred white light that enveloped his body. Right at this moment, the platinum palm passed through his body. With a bang, Ning Tianxing's figure disintegrated and dissipated in the wind-like palm print. It was tyrannical and unstoppable. However, the palm was negated by the phantom fox's power. In the blink of an eye, a new body appeared before everyone's eyes. Ning Tianxing was unharmed, and the phantom fox's soul behind him was only missing a tail. This, Zhang Yu was speechless. Although Ning Tianxing relied on the power of his origin spirit to resolve the emperor statue's attack, it was too shameless. It was nothing more than cheating. At this rate, he would be able to reach the emperor statue and seize the inheritance power if he used the power of the phantom fox to exchange one life for another. Coupling with a demonic beast has always been despised by the world. In order not to let me be affected by those dirty gazes, my mother has never revealed her relationship with my father. She has been staying in the cold cave abyss of the Grand Ding Duchy, silently supporting the Ning family. However, my father really loves my mother, and so do I. What can a descendant of a demonic beast do? I can still look down on the world and look down on thousands of geniuses. Today, the inheritance of the great emperor is mine. Ning Tianxing said arrogantly and continued to move forward. He stepped past Shou Wuk in one step, looking insufferably arrogant. There was no inferiority in him that a descendant of a demonic beast should have. On the contrary, he was proud of his fox bloodline. A cold wind blew past Shou Wuk's face as he looked at Ning Tianxing's back. Is the successor of the Sword Emperor really inferior to Crown Prince Ning Wu? No. Shou Wuk knew very well that he didn't lose in front of the Emperor statue. It was just that the nature of their origin spirits was different, and Ning Tianxing had the advantage. This person is too monstrous. Zhou Wudao watched as the figure got closer and closer to the emperor statue. The inheritance seemed to be within his reach, but in fact he was unwilling to accept it. If he lost to Qin Hao, he would accept it. Ning Tianxing used the evil fox soul technique to take advantage of the situation, but Zhou Wudao was unwilling to accept it. We should go and try, Zhang urged Qin Hao. If they didn't make a move now, they might not have another chance. Don't worry, he is far from finished. Qin Hao's expression was very calm. How could the inheritance of the great emperor be so easily obtained? On the imperial road, the might of the 10 emperors had turned into martial arts to test everyone, and the imperial tribulation had descended. If one wanted to obtain the inheritance of the emperor's statue, the difficulty would definitely be higher. Qin Hao didn't believe that the emperor's statue wouldn't make a move. Rumble, rumble, rumble. As if to prove Qin Hao's words, when Ning Tianqing stepped past Shou Wuk, there was a rumble of thunder in front of him. Immediately after, an even more powerful palm chi shot out. Intense platinum light overlapped, and there was more than one palm shadow. Everyone looked carefully and saw that there were 9 palms approaching. Chapter 1399. The Phantom Fox had 9 lives. The palm strike, just now, had already taken away one of its lives. Now, the emperor statue suddenly launched 9 palm strikes in a row. The ferocious attack had caught everyone off guard, including Ning Tianqing. He could no longer remain calm. His face turned pale. He had experienced the destructive power of the palm strike before. Now that he had launched 9 palm strikes in a row, even if he used up all of his soul power, he would not be able to protect himself. This meant that he might be eliminated. How can this be? Ning Tianqing panicked. Logically speaking, the statue shouldn't have launched such a ferocious attack. How was this a test? It was clearly trying to kill him. He didn't have much time to think. There were only 2 choices in front of him. Take it head-on or give up. If he gave up, the test would disappear, but Ning Tianqing would lose the opportunity to inherit the inheritance. He'd already passed 3 tests. He'd come this far and displayed greater talent than Shou Wuk. He was only 7 or 8 steps away from the statue. How could he be willing to give up so easily? But if he didn't give up, he would die. Calm down. That's right, I still have the Origin Dipper. Father said that it's a rare and powerful treasure from the ancient times. With my current cultivation level comparable to 6th level Emperor Realm, even a 9-star Great Emperor's attack can withstand it. I still have a chance. Qin Hao relied on external help. Why can't I? Ning Tianqing's expression was a little crazy. He had to get the inheritance. His interspatial ring lit up, and a beam of golden light shot out. At that moment, the power of his 3 souls exploded and poured into the golden light. He controlled the golden light to collide with the 9 palms of platinum chi. The Origin Dipper was born in the ancient times and had been lost for a long time. It was rumored that it was boundlessly mysterious and could hold all the treasures in the world. Not only that, but it could also devour a cultivator's vitality and make them lose all their strength. It was very domineering. When the Ning family's ancestor left the desolate forest and conquered Ning Wujiang Mountain, he'd relied on the Origin Dipper's power. Now, the golden chalice was passed down to the 3rd bloodline of the Ning family. It had fallen into the hands of Ning Tianqing. Although his current cultivation was far from being able to unleash the true power of the treasure, it was enough to deal with a 9-star Great Emperor. Without hesitation, he took out the ancient artifact and threw it at the Emperor statue that was testing him. When the primeval Dipper appeared, the space could not help but produce a terrifying turbulence, as if a heavenly tribulation had descended. Even this void space could not withstand its power, and the sound of fragmentation continued to explode. It was about to collapse. The terror of the ancient ritual implement made Qin Hao and the others feel suffocated. Its power was too strong, and they could not stand steadily. They flew towards the golden Dipper body involuntarily. At this moment, it seemed that even their souls were about to be devoured. Bang, 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 bang. In a series of dull, striking sounds, the 9 platinum palm chi were completely absorbed by the golden Dipper. Along with this, countless terrifying cracks were born in the void, mixed with the horrified screams of Zhou Wudao and the others. A damaged divine artifact, the Emperor statue said in an extremely shocked voice. Fortunately, it is damaged, and the boy does not have enough power to support the divine artifact. Open for me. With a majestic roar, the terrifying power of the second level of the Great Emperor realm erupted. The Emperor statue turned from platinum to fiery red. At the same time, the unparalleled power of rules rose and condensed into 6 stars. With a whistling sound, they blasted towards the Golden Dipper. The power of these 6 stars was far more powerful than when they were tested before. At this moment, they contained the power of rules of the second level of the Great Emperor realm. If Ning Sangsong was here, he would not be able to withstand it without being injured. In other words, he did not dare to take it all, because there was a gap between Ning Sangsong and the Emperor's statue. Ning Tianqing's strength was limited, and he could not unleash the power of the primeval dipper. Boom, boom, boom. The 6 stars smashed into the Golden Dipper one after another. The light that shrouded the Golden Dipper suddenly collapsed, and it fell powerlessly at Ning Tianqing's feet. Ning Tianqing's face turned red, and he felt that his stomach was overturned. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face was full of shock. "I lost," he said. He looked at the Emperor's statue with incomparable horror. The flames around the Emperor's statue rose, filled with a strong platinum brilliance. Its majesty was inviolable, and the vast Emperor Qi was unshakable like a mountain. It was so strong that even the primeval dipper could be defeated. It should be known that even Emperor Ning Wuming, who defeated Ning Longjue, could not achieve this strength. Ning Tianqing did not know how high the cultivation of his ancestor was, but he guessed that it would not be much stronger than the Emperor's statue. Moreover, the one who knocked down the primeval dipper was only a stone statue and not the actual person. "Ning Tianqing, are you trying to kill us?" Zhou Wudao was furious, and his eyes were red. Zhang Yi and Shou Wuk circulated their yuan qi and secretly prepared themselves. Qing Jihan also looked at Ning Tianqing differently. The appearance of the primeval dipper was too sudden, and its terrifying power almost strangled everyone on the spot. "I just blocked Senior's attack with the power of the primeval dipper. Why are you making a fuss?" Ning Tianqing bent down to pick up the primeval dipper and put it into his space ring. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and felt much more relaxed. The 9-palm qi had been offset by the primeval dipper. He should have passed. Bang! Suddenly, a wisp of flame flew from the Emperor's statue and blasted Ning Tianqing's chest. The heavy force swept him to the ground, and he fell beside Zhou Wudao. He fell as far as he had walked just now. "Senior, why?" Ning Tianqing was stunned. He had withstood the last test, and the Emperor's statue should have handed over the inheritance, but blasted him back to his original position. "With the strength of external objects, why do you need to prove your doubt of me?" The Emperor's statue said coldly. Ning Tianqing wanted to explain. "You and I are not fated. Do the remaining 3 still want to try? If not, get out of here." The Emperor's statue's eyes flickered like a disappointed elder. His gaze finally fell on Qin Hao, Xiao Han, and Qing Jihan. Chapter 1400. If you want to wear the crown, you have to bear its weight first. If you want to take the inheritance, you have to go through the test. No one would entrust their most precious thing to an incompetent person. Ning Tianqing used external forces to take the test. What was the use of talent? What was the difference between this and dragging the strong cultivators of his family to take the test for him? The test had lost its meaning. "I'm willing to prove the way." Qin Hao stepped forward. He had intended to give the inheritance to Zhou Wudao and Shou Wuk, but since no one could take it, he would take it. "I'm willing to prove the way." Xiao Han also spoke. "I'm willing to prove the way." Qing Jihan followed. Although they knew the power of the Emperor's statue was strong after witnessing everyone's failure, at this moment, none of them flinched. Especially Qing Jihan. She had taken the initiative to invite Qin Hao, but was rejected. Xiao Han said that she was not worthy. This was her chance to prove her ability as the first princess of the East Continent. She had said that she wanted to make Qin Hao and Xiao Han feel inferior. Okay. The Emperor's statue dissipated its monstrous power, and the space returned to calm. Ning Tianqing looked at the 3 of them. He knew that he had completely lost the right to compete, but he was not convinced. He was crowned Prince Ning Wu, a genius with 3 souls. Who else in the world was as peerless as him? He had advanced courageously, passed the 4 tests, and surpassed the heir of the Sword Emperor of the South. The inheritance should have been his. However, he had been mercilessly beaten back to his original position. Shou Wuk, who was not as good as him, had received a wisp of the Emperor statue's sword way. Ning Tianxing's expression was somewhat bleak. Now he had no hope. Among the remaining 3, Qing Jihan was the most competitive. The inheritance would probably fall into her hands. As for Qin Hao, he had to admit that Qin Hao was very lucky. He had used external forces to step onto the imperial road, but he had not been disqualified like him. However, the result was still the same. How could a person who had stepped onto the imperial road but had not made any progress in cultivation compare with the first princess of the East Continent? The inheritance could not fall into Qin Hao's hands. At this moment, the atmosphere was slightly quiet. Everyone's gaze was focused on the 3 of them. Zhou Wudao, Shou Wuk, and even Zhang Yi had high hopes for Qin Hao. Moreover, they were somewhat excited and expectant. With the Emperor statue's power, it could definitely force Qin Hao to go all out. After coming to the fallen Emperor Bei, everyone had improved. No one knew what Qin Hao's cultivation was like. Zhang Yi, on the other hand, was very curious about how much Dendi's successor had learned from Dendi. Whoosh! Whoosh! 3 streaks of starlight shot out from the ball of light, turning into giant meteors midway. Rolling with Emperor's might, they fell towards the 3 people respectively. The 3 of them attacked at the same time with solemn expressions. Qing Jihan closed her beautiful eyes. Her beautiful hair fluttered, and a vast spiritual power was born. It condensed into a sharp thorn and flew forward. It penetrated the meteor and directly pierced through it. Xiaohan's sword will raged around her. She calmly extended a finger forward. A burst of sword chi erupted from her fingertip. This sword chi was not only fast, but also abnormally sharp. Almost as soon as she raised her hand, the sword chi had already pierced through the meteor. What a fast sword! Shou Wuk, the successor of the Sword Emperor, was shocked. Xiaohan was a woman, but her sword will was so fierce and sharp. It was very rare. With this move, she had surpassed all the sword cultivators of the same generation in the southern region. However, this technique was somewhat similar to Qin Hao's. Shou Wuk had sparred with Qin Hao before. He saw the shadow of Qin Hao's sword in Xiaohan. Could it be that the Princess Jingwei of the northern frontier was trained by Qin Hao? Shou Wuk looked at Qin Hao with a strange expression. He couldn't help but look at the master of the Western Liang Pavilion in a new light. However, when he looked over, he saw an even more shocking scene. He was not the only one. Zhou Wudao and Zhang Yi were so shocked that they lost their composure and screamed. However, they saw the imperial aura meteor bombarding towards them. Qin Hao actually stepped forward to meet it calmly, without any intention of resisting. "Are you crazy?" Zhou Wudao shouted. However, it was clear that Qin Hao was not crazy. "Break!" As the sound of his voice faded, the meteor whistled through the air, bringing with it a powerful astral wind. The terrifying pressure caused the scalps of those who saw it to turn numb. However, when the meteor neared Qin Hao, it actually took the initiative to explode, as though Qin Hao's words were in order. Hiss! Zhang Yi and Zhou Wudao looked at each other. This was too crazy. Qin Hao only relied on his aura to shatter the first test. One had to know that the meteor carried the imperial aura, which made them unable to move forward. In Qin Hao's eyes, they were like toys. Qin Hao smiled calmly. How could he not know that the meteor was formed by the imperial aura? In fact, it did not have any real damage. Zhang Yi and Zhou Wudao were repelled because they could not resist the imperial aura released by the imperial aura. After all, the imperial aura was very high, surpassing the 9-star Great Emperor Realm and entering the 2nd stage of the Emperor Realm. However, this power was not a threat to Qin Hao, who had reached the 3rd stage in his previous life. He released his imperial aura and directly shattered it. He's really strong. Shou Wuk did not know how Qin Hao did it. Although he had touched the imperial aura realm, he was far from being able to feel the power of Qin Hao's imperial aura. However, no matter what, Qin Hao, Xiao Han, and Qingji Han were all very strong. Compared to Zhang Yi and Zhou Wudao, the level of geniuses was clear. Is he using external power again? Ning Tianxing's brows tightened. Without using any soul power or yuan qi, Qin Hao shattered the meteor with a shout. What kind of external power did he use? He could even deceive the imperial aura. Huh. There was no time to breathe. After the first stage, the next scene immediately changed. Above the void, a meteor rain gathered and fell on the heads of the three. The meteor rain was dense and vast. The ear-piercing sound of the meteor rain cutting through the sky proved that its power was far from what the first stage could compare to. Open for me. Qingji Han looked up at the meteor rain with a serious expression. The pressure was very strong. She knew that if she did not show her origin spirit, she would not be able to pass this stage. The soul power around her body surged violently. A strange spiritual power that had never been seen before swept out, filling the entire space. Behind her, a huge eye floated. The eye hung in mid-air like the eye of a god, looking down on the common people and emitting an infinitely powerful spiritual net. Zhou Wudao, Zhang Yi, Shou Wuk, and even Ning Tianxing all turned their faces away, not daring to look directly at it. The spiritual power was too strong. It was as if it could paralyze their nerves with a single glance, devour their souls, and turn them into empty shells. I have nirvana. Incomparably violent spiritual fluctuations spread out. Qin Hao swept his gaze over, but it was only a glance. He immediately retracted his gaze. Then, a tingling sensation appeared in his head. Qingji Han's origin spirit was actually the Eye of Nirvana, known as the natural enemy of souls. Qin Hao had never seen it in his previous life, but he had seen an introduction in the Origin Spirit book. This kind of origin spirit was very terrifying. It was rumored that martial artists with the Eye of Nirvana had unlimited spiritual power. With a thought, they could penetrate the enemy's soul and directly erase it. With a high enough realm and strong enough soul power, they could even affect other martial artists' origin spirits. No wonder Qingji Han was so arrogant. She did have the capital to be arrogant. Emperor Yuan, with the Eye of Nirvana, was born in the East Continent. Han Lingxian married someone who had the Eye of Nirvana. Qingji Han's origin spirit was probably inherited from her father's bloodline. However, this had nothing to do with Qin Hao. Focusing his mind, Qin Hao circulated the indestructible samsara art, and the red lotus tyrannical fire wrapped around his body. If he wanted to break through this rain of stars, he obviously couldn't do it without his origin spirit. At this moment, Han Qingji summoned the Eye of Nirvana. The huge eye hung in the void and stared at the meteor shower that was falling from above. At this moment, her entire spirit merged with it. She let out a long howl, and the powerful spiritual net contracted crazily, causing the meteor shower that was falling towards her to explode. Xiao Han stood in place, looking at the star rain with a calm expression. A vast soul power slowly awakened. No one had seen this power before, and it seemed to be different from the soul power of other martial artists. But there was one thing. Xiao Han's aura was not inferior to Qingji Han's. Invisible soul power erupted from Xiao Han's body. At this moment, a faint platinum light flowed through Xiao Han's body. Combined with her bloodline and soul power, it formed a terrifying storm. The storm was like a tornado that swayed upwards, and a meteor shower that fell from above was destroyed by the storm. Emperor's intent. Shou Wuk looked at the faint platinum brilliance, and his heart couldn't calm down. Xiao Han was the same as him. She had also touched the Emperor's intent level before she broke through the second test. This was Emperor Zhao's daughter. This was the broken princess of Beijiang that Qingji Han spoke of. In sharp contrast to the dull face of Xiao Han before, Shou Wuk always felt that she was a burden to Qin Hao. Although he didn't say it out loud, he thought that Xiao Han was only good-looking and wasn't worthy of Qin Hao's talent. Today, seeing how outstanding Xiao Han's talent was, it was enough to compare with Shou Wuk. Maybe I should apologize to Miss Xiao Han. Shou Wuk shook his head and smiled. Qingji Han wanted to suppress Xiao Han, but it didn't seem to be what she wanted. Qin Hao was really lucky. Next, Shou Wuk looked at Qin Hao. Stars fell from the sky, and Qin Hao's whole body turned into flames. The power of the indestructible samsara art in his body made his soul power rise continuously, reaching an unimaginable height. His will shrouded the void, and a sea of fire was born in the void, burning wildly. Crackling sounds continued. Stars fell into the sea of fire and were melted by the red lotus overlord fire. The first test tested whether a cultivator could withstand the emperor's intent. The second test tested whether a cultivator could comprehend the power of emperor's intent. If one couldn't reach this level, no matter how strong the essence soul was, it couldn't compete with the stars. Shou Wuk, Ning Tianxing, and Qingji Han had obviously touched the level of emperor's intent. Ordinary cultivators could only comprehend emperor's intent when they stepped into the half-step Yuan emperor. With their age and weak realm, such talent could be said to be rare in 1,000 years. They were indeed excellent candidates to inherit the inheritance of the emperor's intent. In fact, Qin Hao was a little worried about Xiao Han at the beginning. She had just awakened her spiritual awareness, stepped on the emperor's road, experienced the emperor's tribulation, and faced the test of the emperor's intent. Everything was just to accompany him. Qin Hao knew this in his heart and was worried that she couldn't hold on. When Xiao Han broke out the power of the sword finger, Qin Hao knew that his worries were unnecessary. Xiao Han had probably fully recovered. Not only did she recover, but she might also be cultivating while her spiritual awareness was weakened. After all, that finger was a combination of the graceful sword and the golden finger. Even Qin Hao couldn't find any flaws. This girl's learning talent was very strong. These three people are really... The three of them kept moving forward. Zhou Wudao couldn't help but feel inferior. Genius? He didn't dare to be called this now. I am indeed very weak. Zhang Yi also had a look of shame on his face. He couldn't even make it through the first test, and the three of them were about to reach the position of first seat, which made him realize how insignificant he was. Especially when he thought back to his previous battle with Qin Hao, the shame in his heart grew even stronger. Chapter 1401. Qin Hao did not see Zhang Yi's expression. Even if he did, he was still as calm as water. He had never treated Zhang Yi as an opponent. Seeing that Qingji Han had the Eye of Nirvana, Ning Tianxing's heart wavered a little. The Eye of Nirvana's strange and unpredictable power was not inferior to the nine-life Phantom Fox. If he could not form a good relationship with her, this woman would definitely become a strong opponent in the future. However, Xiao Han's performance surprised him. Ning Tianxing had a deep understanding of the terror of the Star Rain. Xiao Han had touched the Emperor realm and had not even released his primordial spirit. He had only relied on his soul power and Emperor will to block the Star Rain. He seemed to be stronger than Qingji Han. The princess of the northern frontier was so outstanding. He felt that he should re-evaluate Emperor Zhao's daughter. As for Qin Hao, there was nothing that surprised Ning Tianxing. He had seen Qin Hao's ability in the Golden Light City's arena debate. He was indeed extraordinary. It was even more rare for him to kill an enemy in the Emperor realm. However, he still had the same opinion. Even though the Western Liang Pavilion Master was rare, he was still inferior to Shou Wuk. Naturally, he was not his opponent. It was normal for Qin Hao to survive the Star Rain, but he would definitely stop at the third test. Ning Tianxing was very sure of this. You juniors have a promising future. The Emperor's statue praised sincerely. In the past, there were very few people who came to these ruins and completed the Emperor's road. Those who passed the Emperor's statue's first test were 1 in a million geniuses. Those who passed the second test were peerless monsters. Shou Wuk was born with the rules of Sword Dao. Although he had failed at the third test, he was the first person in tens of thousands of years to take more than 10 steps. This was enough to please the Emperor's statue. Now, Qin Hao, Xiao Han, and Qingji Han had all passed the second test and still had the ability to make a breakthrough. The Emperor's statue was very pleased with this generation of juniors in the Divine Wilderness continent. Continue. Platinum light flowed around the stone statue's body. It was filled with the majestic power of the Great Path, making the imperial statue look even more majestic. 3 beams of light flew out from the light ball in his palm. They flashed in the void and pierced toward Qin Hao and the other 2. This was the 3rd test, which stopped Shou-Wuck in his tracks. Although Ning Tianxing was broken, due to his special source spirit, there were traces of trickery, so the emperor's statue was not satisfied. This time, Qin Hao and the other 2 had to show enough strength to convince the emperor's statue. The 3 beams of starlight flew over, sharp and unstoppable. On the surface, it looked like an ordinary attack, but it carried an unfathomable power. It seemed to be similar to the psyche power of the Royal Road, which could directly attack a martial artist's secret and dispel his inner demons. Whoosh! A beam of light flew toward Qingji Han. The platinum light suddenly dispersed, turning into thousands of halos that scattered in all directions, trapping her in the center. The halos flickered like thousands of pairs of eyes floating around her, staring at her. The feeling of being watched by others was very uncomfortable. Streams of vast spiritual force pierced into Han Qingji's mind. Her mind went into a trance, as if the countless eyes around her had all turned into dirty men. Tens of millions of men surrounded her, drooling at the corners of their mouths. Evil, greed, lust, and all sorts of filthy gazes gathered on her body, constantly devouring her soul, almost driving her crazy. It's fake. It's an illusion. Everything is fake. Qingji Han closed her eyes. Unknowingly, her clothes were soaked in sweat. She hated men, especially under the influence of Han Lingxian. Men represented despicable in her heart. But women were born weak and were destined to be inferior to men in many aspects. Therefore, she wore men's clothes. She had to prove that she was not inferior to any man in the world. Now, thousands of lustful eyes were staring at her, and all kinds of men were pointing at her and laughing. It made her feel nauseous and disgusted. She really could not bear it. Following the release of the Eye of Nirvana, the lustful nature of the eyes became clearer, almost imprinted into her soul. The more she wanted to expel it, the clearer it became. 10,000 forms emptiness kill. With a sharp cry, an incomparably turbulent soul power erupted. With Qingji Han as the center, a terrifying spiritual storm swept out, swallowing up the flickering halos in the air. However, when the halos dissipated, Qingji Han also collapsed on the ground, as if she had been fished out of water. Her body was drenched, and sweat flowed down her messy hair. The Eye of Nirvana's radiance had disappeared, and no one knew what she had experienced. It was obvious that she had finally broken through the 3rd obstacle, but the price she had paid was that her soul power was completely exhausted. In other words, she had lost the possibility of continuing forward. If Qin Hao and Xiao Han could still walk, she could only look at their backs with a lonely heart, powerless to chase after them. What a crazy spiritual power! Shou-Wuck was shocked. If the sweeping spiritual storm hit him, even the rules of the sword would not be able to extinguish it. Unfortunately, Qingji Han had used all her strength and clearly could not continue. She and Shou-Wuck had both stopped at the Emperor's statue's 3rd test. The difference was that Shou-Wuck had not succeeded, but Qingji Han had succeeded, although she had used up all her soul power. It was clear that the first princess of the East Continent was slightly better than the Southern region Sword Emperor's successor. This was already very impressive. The starlight flew over, and the power that struck the heart was incomparably terrifying. Xiao Han did not hesitate and immediately released her life origin spirit for the first time. Immediately, the scene blinded everyone's eyes. When Xiao Han's life spirit appeared, the divine radiance was even more resplendent than the Emperor's statues. A crown appeared, full of a noble aura, and descended on Xiao Han's head. For a moment, radiance shone, making her look like an empress. Chapter 1402. Graceful, luxurious, and a supreme sense of authority erupted, causing the starlight to sink into the void, unable to move forward. Everyone was dumbfounded. In that instant, Xiao Han's soul power flowed like mercury, gathering at the crown. A terrifying aura that surpassed the Emperor realm erupted from the crown. It was like a god had descended, crushing the light of the stars. The stars crumbled and dissipated. There was no struggle, no so-called resistance. It was completely destroyed. There wasn't even a chance for heart demons to form. Was it very difficult? Xiao Han calmly looked down at Qingji Han, who was sitting on the ground. The crown was crowned with boundless radiance. It was as majestic as an empress, making it difficult for people to look at her directly. How is this possible? Qingji Han's soul shook. Xiao Han, who came from the ruined northern frontier, had actually shattered the emperor's statue's telekinesis. He had not withstood the test, but completely destroyed it. How tyrannical was his strength? Qingji Han had exhausted her soul power to activate the Eye of Nirvana and barely withstood the test. Xiao Han had directly destroyed the test. The difference was obvious. At this moment, she felt that the princess of the northern frontier's figure was becoming taller and taller in her eyes. It was so tall that she could not compare. Thinking back to just now, she felt ashamed of what she had said about Xiao Han. Now, a sense of humiliation grew in Qingji Han's heart. It was very uncomfortable. The scene of Xiao Han destroying the emperor's statue's telekinesis deeply shocked everyone. However, Qin Hao's performance did not disappoint Zhou Wudao and Shou Wuk. Starlight shot out. Qin Hao stomped on the ground, and a tyrannical dragon roar shook the surroundings. An endless violent aura was born from his body. His body rapidly expanded and was covered by dense dragon scales. His temperament underwent an earth-shattering change. He was full of ferocity, malevolence, and fear. Immediately after, Qin Hao's right hand transformed into a dragon-shaped claw. The claw reached out and grabbed the beam of starlight. The dragon's soul roared, and the power of the dragon's sword. Qin Hao's strength grew stronger and stronger, and even more terrifying flames engulfed his body. When the art of the indestructible Samsara was activated, the monstrous Qin Hao actually crushed the emperor's statue's willpower. He didn't struggle at all. Just like Xiao Han, he destroyed the emperor's statue as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. It can't be so fierce. Shou Wuk's state of mind was greatly impacted. He stared blankly at Xiao Han and then at Qin Hao. This couple was really... Fortunately, Qin Hao's realm was not high when we first fought, so he was suppressed by my soul's source. Otherwise, I would have been crushed by his claw. Zhou Wudao shuddered and completely dispelled the idea of competing with Qin Hao. From this moment on, he was completely convinced. Emperor Qi. He has Emperor Qi. Ning Tianxing stared blankly. The scene of Qin Hao failing the test didn't appear. On the contrary, the other party had crushed the emperor statue's willpower with a thunderous method. At this time, he faintly felt a trace of the emperor's soul power from Qin Hao's body. Was it an illusion? Or the foreign object that Qin Hao had been borrowing was actually the dilly that Yi Ninghong had given to him? Ning Xingtian couldn't figure it out, but the result was obvious. Qin Hao had passed the third test and was closer to the inheritance. I left a strand of emperor spirit here for nearly 10,000 years. Today, I finally found someone worthy of entrusting it to. Happy. The emperor's statue laughed heartily, as if it had never been happy in its life. The platinum light circulated. Its gaze fell on Qin Hao and Xiao Han, and it asked kindly, "Juniors, tell me your names." Qin Hao, Xiao Han. The two replied and withdrew their souls with smiles on their faces. What about you? The emperor's statue looked at Qingji Han again. Although the girl had exhausted her soul power, she had passed the third test. It was really rare. Senior, I'm Qingji Han from the East Continent. Qingji Han struggled to get up. Unlike Qin Hao and Xiao Han, she wasn't happy because she knew that the emperor's statue's so-called entrusted person had excluded him. She was already out. Not bad. Girl, you are slightly stronger than Wuk, but only for a while. There is no limit to cultivation. Don't be arrogant, the emperor's statue said. Qingji Han smiled sadly. Arrogant? In front of Qin Hao and Xiao Han, she was not qualified to be arrogant. The eye of nirvana has endless potential, but your state of mind is flawed and still has weaknesses. I will lend you a method and hope that you will reach the Emperor realm soon." The Emperor's statue said kindly. Then a ray of light flew out of the light ball and entered between Qingji Han's eyebrows. In an instant, mysterious information appeared in her mind, forming a supreme technique that was branded in the depths of Qingji Han's soul. This was a precious technique that had long been lost on the continent. It was related to the soul attack technique. For Qingji Han, it was undoubtedly a huge treasure. Qingji Han was afraid of being a girl, which led to a flaw in her state of mind. The Emperor's statue didn't mention this flaw in front of everyone. It was a kind of protection for her. "Thank you, Senior." Qingji Han bowed gratefully. At the same time, she knew that she had no fate with the inheritance. "Qin Hao Xiao Han," the Emperor's statue said. "Senior." The two of them stepped forward. "Although the two of you are proficient in different fields, you are extremely outstanding and are the people I have been waiting for. However, Senior, Qin Hao cheated with external objects. Is he worthy of your inheritance?" Ning Tianxing shouted loudly and interrupted the Emperor's statue. Chapter 14:03. In front of the Emperor's statue, Qin Hao and Xiao Han were both extraordinarily talented. Qin Hao was proficient in many kinds of martial arts, while Xiao Han's essence soul was quite special. It was also the first time she had seen the Emperor's statue. Although it was her first time, she felt that the crown could absorb the spiritual energy of all things, so it must be a full attribute essence soul. Judging from Xiao Han's performance, her essence soul majored in spiritual control. For a moment, the Emperor's statue didn't know who to choose as its successor. Both of them were too outstanding. At this time, Ning Tianxing openly questioned Qin Hao's ability and accused him of using foreign objects. In his opinion, when stepping on the Emperor's road, all the geniuses were suppressed by the Emperor's power and blocked the road with their telekinesis. Only Qin Hao was not affected. During the Emperor's tribulation, everyone was tested and broke through, but Qin Hao's cultivation remained stagnant. Then there was the Emperor's statue's test. Ning Tianxing knew Qin Hao's ability like the back of his hand. Surviving the second test was his limit, but he crushed the third test. His behavior was outrageous. Was he stronger than Shou Wuk, who was born with the rules of the Sword Dao? Ning Tianxing didn't believe it. Hearing this, Qin Hao turned around and stared at Crown Prince Ning Wu with his deep eyes. "Brother, I'm not targeting you. I'm just stating facts and seeking justice. You used foreign objects to deceive your seniors. If the inheritance fell into your hands, I'm sure others won't accept it, right?" Ning Tianxing said, and then looked at everyone. "You're still talking to me about relying on foreign forces?" Qin Hao smiled. Because he was special, it was normal for his strange performance in the ruins to arouse suspicion. From the perspective of others, he could understand. Even if Ning Tianxing asked, there was nothing wrong with him, but there was always a hint of jealousy in his tone. Now, he still had the face to talk about relying on foreign forces? Who relied on foreign forces? The primordial chaos Golden Dipper? You? Ning Tianxing's mouth twitched. "I passed the third trial with the strength of a 9 lives Phantom Fox. Who would have thought that Senior would attack me with all his strength? I had no choice but to protect myself." He believed that withstanding the third tribulation was his true ability. This was completely different from Qin Hao. It would be unfair for the Emperor's statue to attack Ning Tianxing with all its might. "I will naturally distinguish whether or not you are borrowing external items. Why do I need you to say so much?" The Emperor's statue solemnly said. Ning Tianxing had passed the third trial by relying on his innate source spirit. But his source soul was too strange, a life for a life. In reality, he hadn't unearthed his true potential. This was what the Emperor's statue was dissatisfied with. Qin Hao, on the other hand, showed no signs of using external forces. This person's soul was very strong, and his cultivation technique was overbearing. His source spirit's grade and soul power had almost reached the peak, so it was reasonable for him to pass the third trial. Senior's judgment? Qin Hao turned around and saluted. Ning Tianxing's face stiffened. Even the emperor's statue recognized Qin Hao. Since this was the case, it was useless for him to say anything more. But he didn't give up. Ning Tianxing was still unconvinced. Even if Senior recognizes Qin Hao's true ability, they only went through 3 trials. Why do I have to go through 4? This is unfair to this junior. Crown Prince Ning Wu, no one forced you to step on the Emperor's road and experience the Emperor's tribulation. Senior's inheritance can be given to whoever he wants. Why do you have so many problems? Shut up. No one will take you for a mute. Even Zhou Wu Dao couldn't stand it. If he couldn't afford to play, he could withdraw. The Emperor's statue pondered for a moment. Ning Tianxing's thoughts couldn't be changed. However, he was indeed a little worried at this time. He transmitted a message. Those who obtain my inheritance have actually met 3 trials. Wuk is 1 step away, and Qingji passed. However, there are existences more outstanding than Qingji. Qin Hao, Xiao Han, are you willing to take another trial? The implication was that if Qin Hao and Xiao Han weren't there, the inheritance would definitely be given to Qingji Han. Since there were more outstanding existences, he should choose the best inheritor. It was Qin Hao and Xiao Han's fault for being equally outstanding. It was difficult to choose between the 2. Don't worry. Regardless of whether the trial is successful or not, the inheritance will be born between the 2 of you. As for who to choose, I will decide, the Emperor statue said. He had set up a 4th trial on the basis of the original 3 trials. This was a way to determine who was more talented between Qin Hao and Xiao Han. As for Ning Tianxing, the Emperor's statue ignored him. He wasn't a fool and would naturally understand why he suddenly gave him a full blow. What do you think? Qin Hao didn't mind and asked Xiao Han with a smile. Very good. Han, or has never competed with big brother Qin Hao. If you lose, don't cry. Xiao Han replied with a smile. I have never lost when competing with others. Qin Hao reached out and scratched the bridge of her nose. In his previous life, Dinda had never lost. Even if he died in the 9 Heavens God's punishment formation, he still wouldn't lose. He could die, but he wouldn't lose unless he didn't want to win in the first place. However, if he were to compete with Han, so what if he lost to her? At this moment, Qin Hao made a decision in his heart. Then, Senior, please begin. Xiao Han smiled at the Emperor's statue. She knew that her bloodline was powerful. In this lower realm, if it was just talent under her soul crown, there was no way she could be a match. Unless she didn't want to win. Okay. The Emperor's statue was very satisfied. Immediately, his body flowed with platinum light again. Powerful rule power filled his body. Just like when he defeated Ning Tianxing, he decided to use the rule power this time. He also wanted to see the limits of the potential of these 2 outstanding juniors in front of him. I'm looking forward to it. Show what completely ignored Ning Tianxing. Not only him, but everyone present, including Qingji Han, also wanted to see who was more talented between Qin Hao and Xiao Han. Go! The Emperor's statue shouted softly. The ball of light flickered and separated into 2 rays of light. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared between the eyebrows of the 2. At this moment, incomparably powerful rule power invaded their bodies and seeped into their souls. Qin Hao and Xiao Han suddenly trembled. Their bodies went numb as if they had been electrocuted. A layer of flashing lightning wrapped around them. Both of them closed their eyes and frowned. Their faces were slightly distorted, as if their wills were caught in a battle. This situation didn't last long. After about 10 breaths, the lightning that enveloped Qin Hao's body was the first to break and then dissipate into nothingness. Immediately after, Xiao Han did the same. The 2 of them opened their eyes at the same time and looked at each other with incomparable guilt. It was as if they had made a big mistake. Zhou Wu Dao and the others looked at each other, puzzled. No one knew what had happened, and no one knew whether Qin Hao and Xiao Han had passed the 4th test or who had won. Ha ha! Wonderful, wonderful. The continent actually has a pair of perfect jade like you. It won't be long before I will no longer be lonely. In contrast to the reactions of the others, the Emperor's statue laughed heartily. The results of the test were very satisfying and completely exceeded his expectations. He asked, Of the two of you, which one of you will inherit my legacy? What's going on? Both of you passed. Zhou Wudao and Shou Wuk were shocked. Impressive indeed. Zhang Yu was ashamed. This. Qin Hao was also very surprised. Just now, when the emperor statue's rule power reached him, he had wanted to give up resisting. At the crucial moment, his Dharma idol had awakened. The dragon spirit Dharma idol had the same talent as Qin Hao and the same strength. It had everything that the main body had, including the endless samsara art's power of laws. It would not allow Qin Hao to fail. The moment it awakened, it used its power of laws to destroy the emperor statue's rule power, allowing it to win. This went against Qin Hao's wishes. He wanted Xiao Han to win, but unexpectedly, Xiao Han had succeeded on her own. It's my fault. Xiao Han lowered her head, her face filled with grievance. She had no choice at all. The crowned source spirit had inherited her mother's bloodline. Her mother was a member of the god race, so her bloodline was very strong. Her thoughts were the same as Qin Hao's. She had wanted to give up, but the emperor statue's rule power had invaded her, arousing a strong resistance from the crescent moon pendant. The crescent moon pendant was the only thing the crown princess had left for Xiao Han. It would protect her on its own and directly destroy the emperor statue's rule power. It was said that fate played tricks on people. The two people who had wanted to give up had won at the same time. But this time, the emperor's statue no longer had any worries. It had completely tested the talents of the two people. They both had the qualifications to become gods. Qin Hao was a Yuan venerate and had cultivated nomological law power. Xiao Han was a mortal, but the blood of the god race flowed in her veins. It would be a great fortune for either of them to receive the emperor's statue's inheritance. I can see that the two of you deliberately gave in just now, which proves that you both love each other very much. In fact, what difference does it make who receives the inheritance? The emperor's statue comforted them like a kind elder. However, this kid's soul power is overbearing and he focuses on the Tao of offense. In comparison, he is more suitable to receive the inheritance. The emperor's statue was referring to Qin Hao. The red lotus fire and dragon soul were both ridiculously strong and full of explosive power. Xiao Han had the bloodline of the god race. Although she was also very strong, the direction of her cultivation leaned towards mind control and could not perfectly display the power of the emperor's statue's inheritance. I have no objections. Xiao Han raised her head happily. This was the result she wanted. In fact, the moment the emperor's statue's laws invaded her soul, she knew the essence of her senior's martial path. The emperor's statue had two types of law power. The first was the meteorite that everyone faced during the test, which was called the meteorite law. The second was called the burning law. The burning law could affect any martial artist's origin soul, elemental, plant, beast, tool, and so on. It could stimulate the origin soul's greatest potential. If the burning law was given to Qin Hao's red lotus fire, then his soul power would undergo a terrifying qualitative change. Even Qin Hao himself could not imagine it. Senior, please make the decision. Qin Hao was a little embarrassed. Previously, he had indeed underestimated the emperor's statue's inheritance. Since he had the laws, why did he need to care about the power of the laws? Under the laws were ineffective. However, Qin Hao was wrong at this moment. Touching his conscience, the burning law was very suitable for him. If he burned the red lotus fire and the dragon soul together, he felt that even if he did not enter the god realm, he would be invincible on the continent. Okay, the emperor's statue did not say much. The ball of light on its palm emitted a dazzling brilliance. In the intense brilliance, a mighty martial artist phantom walked out. It walked with the steps of an emperor towards Qin Hao and overlapped with him. At this moment, Qin Hao's temperament changed. After the brilliance dissipated, everyone looked at Qin Hao. They felt that there was something extra on his body. As for what it was, no one could tell. However, one thing was very obvious. Qin Hao had become more confident. Thank you, Senior. Qin Hao bowed deeply. Receiving Senior's inheritance, as Senior's successor, I should pay my respects to my master. Unfortunately, this junior already has a master. There is no need to care about the trifles. The emperor's statue magnanimously said, leaving the Tao here, it would be bestowed to a fated person. May I ask Senior's name? If I am lucky enough to meet you, I will definitely repay your kindness. Qin Hao raised his body. My name is Martial Monarch. The emperor's statue replied with an ancient voice. This soft voice seemed to spread throughout the world. Martial Monarch, a name that the martial artists of the divine wilderness continent would never forget. Martial Monarch's glory was even greater than that of Dindi in the past, because he was the first person to become a god. Chapter 1404. A long time ago, the divine wilderness continent also had an era where countless god-level cultivators ascended. That period of time was incomparably glorious, but gradually, due to the lack of spirit chi or the withering of talents, it was difficult for anyone to step foot into the upper realm until it was broken by the martial lord 10,000 years ago. No one remembered his real name, and many of his glorious deeds were also lost in time. Only the two words, martial lord, were forever remembered by future generations. Ning Tianxing and the others were shocked. Although they had guessed his identity before, now that the martial lord had personally admitted it, they were even more shocked. All of you have extraordinary talent, and your future achievements will not be inferior to mine. You will be the role models of the divine wilderness continent's martial artists, and you'll have already broken through the divine realm. All of you have gained something from this trip, and it can be considered complete. Those who have nothing to do can leave. Those who have doubts can stay here for enlightenment. The emperor's statue dissipated its brilliance and returned to its original stone form. It stood there, waiting for the fated person to come. When the time came, the emperor's will would awaken. Qin Hao and Xiao Han bowed again before retreating. This trip made everyone feel as if they were in a dream, and the aftertaste was endless. Just as the martial lord had said, every one of them had gained something. Be it Qin Hao, Head Wuk, Zhan Yi who had failed, or Ning Tianxing who had been forced to retreat, when they had personally experienced the power of the great emperor, everyone's view of martial arts had been raised to a whole new level. Everyone's state of mind had improved. Senior's breadth of mind makes me ashamed. Qin Hao turned around and sighed. The martial lord left his path here to pass it on to future generations. No matter how many generations he benefited, he did not ask for anything in return, nor did he have any selfish motives. Such breadth of mind and breadth of mind, compared to Qin Hao who wanted to move the statue, he was indeed a little too selfish. Thinking of this, Qin Hao dismissed the idea of moving the stone statue. He would let them continue to guard the ruins. 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, they would be immortal, and martial arts would exist forever. Next, Qin Hao and Xiao Han left. Qingji Han's state of mind was lacking. Although she passed the third test, she still had a weakness. She stayed where she was, thinking about the scene just now. On one hand, it was to train her state of mind. On the other hand, it was to practice the soul attack technique imparted by the emperor's statue. Zhou Wudao, Zhan Yi, and Shou Wuk all stayed behind. Ning Tianxing was the same. Ning Tianxing relied too much on the power of the life fox, resulting in his zither spirit and bloodline source spirit not being able to tap into their full potential. He had great talent, but didn't want to improve himself, wasting his talent. It was because of this that he was rejected by the emperor's statue. He deeply regretted it, so he stayed with them. After Qin Hao and Xiao Han came out, they returned to the road of the 10 emperors. At the end of the path of the 10 sovereigns, Yi Shui Han had fainted. He was obsessed with seeing the scenery at the end of the path of the 10 sovereigns and had almost gone mad. He had forced himself to see the scenery at the end of the path of the sovereigns and had fainted here. Therefore, he did not follow the others into the emperor's statue space. Qin Hao and Xiao Han walked past quietly and did not disturb Yi Shui Han. Perhaps when he woke up, there would be a chance for him to step into the space of the emperor's statue. After that, they saw Mo Xian, Lei Jiao, and Fairy Qianing, who were still under the pressure of the 10 emperors. The 3 of them were still in a state of enlightenment and had yet to come out. Kai Xiao Jiao, Chun Wanqin, Xiaogua, and Feng Qianli were sitting in the area of the 9 Emperor Suppression. Qin Yun, Aku, Yu Qianyang, Yi Yao, and the 3 demon generals were sitting in the area of the 8 Emperor Suppression. The places where the 7th and 6th emperors had been suppressed were all filled with geniuses from different countries on the Imperial Road. Qin Hao and Xiao Han walked all the way and finally returned to Yuning Chang's side. Yuning Chang was an 8th level Yuan Venerate without a source spirit. Compared to the others in the group, her talent was not outstanding. Therefore, she was the first to be suppressed and stopped below the 6 emperors. When they returned, Qin Hao and Xiao Han also sat down and waited for Yuning Chang to wake up. They sat there for more than 10 days. All the geniuses on the Emperor's Road were in a rather quiet state. However, the outside world was bustling with noise and excitement. A large number of martialists were constantly pouring into the ruins, forming a spectacular cultivation scene. Many people had obtained the martial path essence of the venerate statues or powerful cultivation techniques, while a small number of people had entered the Emperor's area. However, very few martialists had entered the territories of the 10 emperors, let alone reach the end of the 10 emperors and enter the Emperor statue space. Therefore, the opportunities obtained by the martialists outside were far inferior to those obtained by Xiaogua and the others, as well as those obtained by Shou Wuk and the others in the Emperor statue space. Qin Hao was the only one who had obtained the inheritance of a great emperor. The spectacular cultivation scene continued for a few more days. On this day, the silence was finally broken. A voice echoed in the minds of every participant. The signs had ended, and the sacred palace was selecting disciples. The martialists who had come to fallen Emperor Bei had been looking forward to this day for a long time, as if they had been waiting for a few hundred years. Even the geniuses who had been in a state of enlightenment on the Emperor's Road woke up at the same time. Brother Qin Hao, did you hear something? Xiao Han slowly opened his eyes. Qin Hao nodded. Yes, the selection has begun. After that, Qin Hao stood up and looked out of the Emperor's Road. At this moment, Yuning Chang's body suddenly bloomed with powerful flames. A golden light rose into the sky. She had broken through to the Renhuang Plain. Congratulations, Sister Ing Chang. Qin Hao smiled. Qin Hao, Yuning Chang, who had just woken up, was a little surprised. Her first reaction was not to be excited about her breakthrough, but to see Qin Hao standing in front of her. Could it be that he had failed? Yuning Chang could not accept that he had not completed the 6 Emperor's coercion. As Dende, how could Qin Hao lose to Zhang Yi? Qin Hao smiled and said nothing. He looked at the loneliness in Yuning Chang's eyes and did not explain anything. He would use his actions to prove himself. Cousin, brother, brother-in-law, brother-in-law. The Divine Palace is about to select disciples. A large group of people walked in front of them. Qin Yun, Aku, Xiaogua, Chen Wanqin, and the others had all awakened from their epiphany. Everyone's aura had strengthened a lot. The faint golden light fluctuations were obvious. They had all reached the Renhuang Plain. Yes, there was a voice calling just now. The Divine Palace is about to select disciples. Let's go out first. Qin Hao looked at the end of the Emperor's Road. Shou Wuk, Zhou Wudao, and the others had not appeared yet. However, since the others had woken up, with Shou Wuk's ability, he would not disappoint Qin Hao. The group left the relic first. They followed the river crossing chain and passed through layers of fog to reach the outside world. They breathed in the fresh air of the outside world. What surprised everyone was that the vitality circulating in their bodies did not stagnate in their meridians because they had left the relic world. The vitality in their meridians was still surging and full of strength. This meant that the restriction of Diluo Bei had been lifted. Roar. Xiaogua clenched his fists and let out a roar. Immediately, the golden vitality around him surged violently. Light appeared behind him, and the shadow of a blue ox roared into the sky. Everyone looked at each other. Indeed, they could use their vitality and primordial spirits. Fly, let's go. Qin Hao summoned his primordial wings. The flaming wings spread out, and he sped away like a meteor. He was as fast as light cutting through the void with a rumbling sound. This scene shocked Sayogwa. Qin Hao's cultivation level had not changed. However, it seemed that his power was much stronger than before. What kind of great fortune did Big Brother obtain in the relic? The figure that whizzed away had a suffocating sense of oppression. Everyone summoned their primordial wings and followed. Everyone had obtained something in the relic, but the current situation did not give them time to talk. They had to rush to the test site first. According to the voice in their minds, the test site was set at the central island of Diluo Bay. Everyone had seen the central island before, because they could not use their vitality before and Diluo Bay was too big. Therefore, no one had walked to the central island. Now that the restriction had been lifted, everyone summoned their primordial wings and flew away. Streaks of light cut through the void. Their auras were strong and weak. It was extremely bright and spectacular. Not long after, almost all the candidates had gathered on the central island. Looking around, there was a sea of people. Even though many warriors had died in the 3 months of cruel survival, there were still 6,000 to 7,000 survivors. Those who had survived were all the strongest of the strong. Now, they all stood on the central island, waiting for the qualification to enter the Divine Palace. The central island was like a battle arena floating above Diluo Bay. It was flat and did not stand out. However, the area was large enough to accommodate thousands of people. At this time, there were many wonders on the island. After Qin Hao arrived, the first thing that came into view was a huge ring. There were 9 war drums placed on the ring, and each of them was as big as a millstone. The skin of the drums was suffused with a thick greenish-black feeling. It was unknown what grade of magical bee skin was used to make these drums. In short, it gave people a heavy feeling. If I wanted to sound it, it would not be easy. In addition, there was another battle arena. There was a golden bell floating in the air. It was dozens of feet high and extremely dazzling. In the third battle arena, there were 10 statues. They were like the statues in the world of relics. However, it was unknown what grade they were. The fourth battle arena was more strange. It was a complete flower bed. In the flower bed, there was a tiny plant. Without looking carefully with the naked eye, one could not even see it. It was unknown what it was used for. In the fifth battle arena, there was a huge ancient mirror. On the central island, there were a total of 5 battle arenas. Each battle arena represented a different meaning. As for what the test was, the candidates did not know. They could only wait for the people from the Divine Palace to come. Big Brother, what realm are you in now? I feel that you seem to have changed. As for what exactly is different, I can't tell. By the way, what is at the end of the royal road? Sayogwa was full of interest. There was no end to his questions. He could not change his old habit of talking nonstop. The end of the royal road? Qin Hao has reached the end of the royal road? Yuning Chong was in disbelief. When she opened her eyes, she saw Qin Hao beside her. She thought he was also stuck in the land of the 6 emperors. According to Sayogwa's words, it seemed that Qin Hao had reached the end of the royal road. Ask your brother Han. He has really reached the end of the royal road. Qin Hao still did not want to say it out loud. He was afraid that it would hurt his brother. Ahem, big brother, don't joke around. How would I know? I fainted. Yishui Han was still a little dizzy. However, he did have the impression that he had reached the end of the royal road. However, he fainted for a moment. When he woke up again, he found himself in a strange space. There was only a statue. In front of the statue sat Shou Wuk and others. Qin Hao and Xiao Han were nowhere to be seen. What was more infuriating was that the statue was like a large meteorite. Yishui Han fainted again. What's at the end of the 10 emperors? You should ask my prince, not him. At this moment, the 3 demon generals stepped forward. Zhong Yun's cold eyes fell on Qin Hao. They were filled with intense, killing intent. Qin Yun and the others looked over. Zhong, Ans, Gu Kuei, and Liu Bingyan did not know them. However, the 3 of them were very strong. When Qin Yun arrived at the land of the 8 emperors, the 3 of them had already entered a state of enlightenment. Furthermore, Zhong, Ans had walked further and was stuck in the land of the 9 emperors. They did not know each other and did not offend them. However, Their tone was very unfriendly. It was as if they were saying that Qin Hao was inferior to their prince. Ask your prince? Haha. In my opinion, you should ask my senior brother Lei Jiao first. A Leichuan Judgment Hall disciple was unconvinced. After he finished speaking, he scanned the crowd as if he was looking for his fellow disciples. This Judgment Hall disciple was stuck in the land of the six emperors. He was a little ahead of Yuning Chong and was about to step into the land of the seven emperors. Although he saw Qin Hao surpass him midway, he did not believe that Qin Hao had the ability to reach the end of the 10 emperors due to his trust in Lei Jiao. The only expert who had reached that position was his senior brother Lei Jiao. Chapter 1405. What's at the end of the 10 emperors? Of course, it's a sword. Two disciples of Tianju's Sword Palace walked over, their tone firm. Obviously, they were implying that Feng Qianli had reached the end. It's a sword, but it's our senior brother Shou Wu's sword. The disciples of Wu's sword sect of the southern region were unwilling to give in. Wrong. It's a saber, my senior brother Zhang Ye's saber. Ridiculous. It's my senior sister Qianning. My senior brother. My senior sister. My senior brother Lei Jiao is invincible. For a moment, everyone was arguing endlessly. They all had strong expectations for the leaders of their respective sects. Yuning Chong looked at Qin Hao with the same expectation. She didn't think that Qin Hao was weaker than the leaders of the other sects. Qin Hao smiled and didn't say anything. If he said that he had reached the end and obtained the inheritance of a god-level master before his ascension, he would probably shock everyone. Besides, there was still a trace of the divine path in the inheritance. Even if he said it, the disciples of Zhuiying Sword Palace, Judgment Hall, and Water Jade Holy Kingdom wouldn't believe him. Everything would be confirmed with action. What's the fuss about? While they were arguing, figures flew down from the distance. Feng Qianli, Mo Xian, Lei Jiao, Fairy Qianning, and then Zhou Wudao, Zhang Yi, Shou Wu, and so on. They finally left the ruins and met up with the people of the sect. Senior brother. The disciples of Zhuiying Sword Palace were pleasantly surprised. The sword intent flowing between Feng Qianli's brows was even stronger. He must have gained a lot in the ruins. Senior brother, you've reached the end of the Imperial Road. How is your realm now? Feng Qianli's eyes flashed with melancholy. He sighed. Peak of the 3rd level of the Emperor realm. Unfortunately, I can't continue. I stopped under the pressure of the 9 emperors and couldn't see the end. What a pity. The two disciples of Zhuiying Sword Palace were stunned. Even with Feng Qianli's talent, he couldn't reach the end of the Imperial Road. The 10 emperors' pressure, each of which is half a step away from the Emperor realm. Senior brother can withstand the pressure of the 9 emperors and reach the peak of the 3rd level of the Emperor realm. It's enough to make thousands of geniuses. Someone said. He seemed to be comforting Feng Qianli, but what he said was also the truth. With the signs of the Divine Palace, hundreds of thousands of martial artists gathered in the Southern Territory. They fought on the arena, and only 1 in 100 was chosen. They crossed the dangerous inland sea and broke through the blockade of sea monsters. In the end, only a little more than 10,000 martial artists managed to reach Fallen Emperor Bay. Out of these 10,000 plus people, which one of them wasn't a monstrous genius? How many of them had reached the territory of the 10 emperors, let alone being qualified to withstand the pressure of the 9 emperors? Feng Qianli had stopped at the 9th emperor realm and had broken through to the next level after gaining enlightenment. He was worthy of the title, causing thousands of geniuses to pale in comparison. After listening to his peers, Feng Qianli felt a little better. However, compared to the other geniuses, he was still lacking. At the very least, he had lost to Shou Wu of the southern region in a battle of swordsmanship. Your Highness, what about you? How is your cultivation now? Zhong, Ans, Gu Kuei, and Lu Bingyan all looked at Mo Xian. I stepped into the territory of the 10 emperors, but this is where I came to a halt. I was unable to see the scenery at the end. 4th level Emperor realm. Mo Xian said with the same regret. The 3 demon generals' hearts were in turmoil. Even Mo Xian, the number 1 martial Dao genius of DevilNet, hadn't been able to walk out of the 10 Emperor suppression. However, compared to Feng Qianli, Mo Xian was clearly in the lead. I also stopped at the 10 Emperors. Fairy Qianning spoke before her junior sister could ask. Although her cultivation wasn't higher than Mo Xian's, she wasn't much weaker than Feng Qianli. She was at mid-third level Emperor realm. Me too, Sai. Lei Jiao sighed heavily and hammered his chest with his fist. Fourth level Emperor realm. Two cultivators from the edge of the world stood nearby, dejected. They hadn't even stepped into the territory of the 8 emperors. Yu Qianyang of Blazing Sun Temple was livid and shut his mouth. He had once been hailed as the most outstanding genius of the Southern Territory. How glorious was he to stand shoulder to shoulder with Shouwuk. However, in the ruins, he'd been trapped by the aura of the 8 emperors and couldn't advance a single step. The gap between him and Shouwuk was too great. He could only watch as Shouwuk got further and further away. Changhalo and the Ghost Wilderness cultivators were the same. Stuck in the territory of the 7 emperors, they didn't have the face to brag. Moreover, they hadn't even had the chance to enter enlightenment. They'd been mercilessly beaten back to their original position. That's too scary. Has no one reached the end? A disciple of Wuk's sword sect asked. He'd originally held great expectations for Shouwuk. But now, after listening to Lei Jiao and the others' descriptions, it was as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over them. No matter how talented Shouwuk was, he shouldn't be much stronger than the leading geniuses of the various sect. The end? It's just an imperial statue. There's nothing surprising about it. A lazy voice sounded at this time. Zhou Wudao stretched lazily on purpose, appearing very casual. You've reached the end? Mo Xian's gaze was focused. Before the Enlightenment, he knew that Zhou Wudao was in front. As for whether he'd reached the end, he wasn't sure. The others' hearts trembled, and they looked over at the same time. No, it's not the end. I've stepped out of the end and reached a void. There's an imperial statue there. Zhou Wudao pretended to smile casually, his eyes filled with pride. Hiss! A series of gasps could be heard. Imperial statue? At the end of the 10 emperors, there was an imperial statue. Seeing Zhou Wudao's confident expression, it shouldn't be fake. At this moment, all the disciples of the various sects were shocked. Someone had really stepped out of the end of the royal road, and this person was the prince of the great Zhou Empire of the East Continent, Zhou Wudao. At this moment, Mo Xian's heart was filled with mixed feelings. The 3 dark generals quietly clenched their fists. Zhou Wudao, the prince of the great Zhou who opposed the Moro kingdom, had stepped out of the end. This proved that he was stronger than Mo Xian. How could they not be moved? What's there to show off? With your talent, isn't it normal to reach the end of the royal road? Tan Geng, who came to the southern region with Zhou Wudao, rolled his eyes, but his tone was full of joy. Bai Xiaotong, who looked like a sickly ghost, nodded repeatedly, also very excited. Seeing this, many of the disciples of the Wuk sword sect sighed. One of them said, Eldest senior brother, even if you didn't step out of the end, you're still the pride of our sword sect. Shouwuk. Yes, you should be proud of him. This kid obtained a strand of the imperial sword while in front of the imperial statue. Zhou Wudao was extremely jealous. It's just a strand of sword wool. What did you say? The disciples of the sword sect were shocked. The imperial sword wool? It's definitely not the emperor's stage. He entered the void with me and went through the trial of the imperial statue. He broke through 3 obstacles, and the statue praised him greatly. It said that he had the potential to become a god and gave him a strand of supreme sword will. That's it. Zhou Wudao really didn't want to say it. He looked at Shouwuk. Can't you say it yourself? Do you have to pretend to be low-key like Qin Hao? Eldest senior brother, is it true? The disciples of the sword sect were overjoyed and hurriedly surrounded Shouwuk. Originally, it was enough to make the sect proud that Shouwuk had reached the end of the imperial road. Who would have thought that not only did this most talented sword Dao genius step out of the imperial road, but he also faced the imperial statue's trial like the prince of Great Zhou. Moreover, he passed 3 tests and obtained a strand of the imperial sword will. Although the disciples of the sword sect had never entered the void, they could imagine how difficult it was to pass the 3 tests of the 9-star Great Emperor. Showuk withstood it and was praised as having the potential to become a god. He also obtained a strand of the imperial sword will. The sect was fortunate, and the sword sect was glorious. Yes. At this moment, Showuk finally nodded and admitted it. If the sect master finds out, he will definitely give us 3 months off. The disciples of the sword sect were all moved to tears. Creak. Feng Qianli clenched his fists. The successor of the southern region, Sword Emperor, had stepped out of the imperial road and obtained a strand of the imperial sword will. Although this strand of the imperial sword will was nothing and was very precious to ordinary people, Feng Qianli could find the Zhuiying Sword Emperor anytime if he wanted to comprehend the sword will. What made him feel unbalanced was that Showuk had stepped out of the imperial road and faced the imperial statue's trial, and he was stuck in the land of the 9 emperors. What kind of gap was this? He was not convinced, really not. He did not think that Showuk's sword was very strong. If he could be given a chance, he could also pass the 3 tests of the imperial statue. He would definitely be able to do it. Limitless Sword Dao and Limitless Sword Dao. I have only taken a small step forward. There is still a long way to go. Showuk was very serious. This was a door to the Sword Dao that he had opened after going through the 3 tests of the imperial statue and being inspired by Qin Hao. But he did not know that many martial artists on the continent could not take this step in their lifetime. But at this moment, Feng Qianli snorted after hearing this. Not only me, Zhan Yi, Qin Hao, Xiao Han, Ning Tianxing, and her all entered the land of the void and received the imperial statue's trial. Each of them gained something. Showuk pointed at everyone one by one and finally looked at Qingji Han. Qingji Han had exhausted all her soul power to barely pass the 3rd test because her state of mind was lacking. The martial lord once said that her talent was not inferior to Showuk's, and her ability was even slightly better. Showuk secretly remembered this point. Of course, she was only slightly better than him for now. What? This? The scene was stirred up again. The eyes of the disciples of the various sects fell on the group of people who had entered the land of the void. Not only Showuk, but also Zhong Zhanyi, Ning Tianxing, and the first princess of the East Continent, Qingji Han, had all stepped through the end of the 10 emperors. Among them, Qin Hao, the master of the Western Liang Pavilion, was also among them. At this moment, the people of the Judgment Hall and Zhuiying Sword Palace felt very uncomfortable. Previously, they had secretly mocked Qin Hao, saying that he was inferior to Lei Jiao and Feng Qianli. The person who had reached the end of the imperial road would definitely not be him. And now, it was indeed not Qin Hao, because he had stepped through the end and directly faced the imperial statue's trial. Princess, congratulations. Mo Xian's previous loneliness was swept away. When he learned that Qingji Han had entered the land of the void, he seemed to be happier than when he had faced the imperial statue's trial. There's nothing to congratulate. I only passed 3 tests and obtained an imperial-level cultivation method. I did not receive the approval of the imperial statue, and the inheritance is not with me. Qingji Han said, Inheritance? There is actually an inheritance of the great emperor? Everyone held their breaths, and their heartbeats suddenly accelerated. Why had they come here? Why had they entered the divine palace? Was it not for the sake of cultivating the imperial level? Now, among the geniuses who had stepped into the land of the void, there was actually someone who had obtained an imperial-level inheritance, and it was a 9-star great emperor. Of course there is. My results were the same as Qingji's, and I also passed 3 tests. However, I was defeated by the 4th test and was unable to obtain the inheritance of the senior. Ning Tianxing said with an incomparably calm expression. Until now, he still thought that he had passed 3 tests, and these words were said to Mo Xian, as if to tell him that he was stronger than him. Congratulations, Mo Xian said lightly. He naturally understood some of the meaning from Ning Tianxing's expression, but he would not take it to heart. From the beginning to the end, he had never had unrealistic thoughts about Qingji Han. Even if he admired her, it would only be buried in the bottom of his heart. Therefore, there would not be any conflict between him and Ning Tianxing. However, at this time, Mo Xian felt that something was strange. Since Shou Wuk did not obtain the inheritance, Ning Tianxing and Qing Jihan did not obtain the inheritance either. Then, who exactly had the inheritance of the great emperor? He naturally would not consider Zhou Wudao. He understood Zhou Wudao. Even if his talent was better than his and he had stepped onto the imperial road, he was definitely not qualified to compete with Qing Jihan. Then, among the remaining people, there were only Qin Hao, Xiao Han, and Zhang Yi. It's not me. I couldn't even pass the first test. Zhou Wudao was the same as me. Zhang Yi and Mo Xian looked at each other and directly denied it. Suddenly, the atmosphere became tense. Almost everyone's eyes were focused on Qin Hao and Xiao Han. Now that only the two of them had entered the land of the void, who could it be? Big brother, sister. Xiaohua held Qin Hao's arm tightly. Kay stared at Xiao Han excitedly. As for Yuning Chong, she felt that it was difficult to breathe. However, even if Qin Hao had really obtained the inheritance of the great emperor, it was completely reasonable. Chapter 1406. Qin Hao was at the peak of martial arts in his previous life. There were only a handful of first-level great emperors who were on par with Dendi. Even if the great emperor statue came from the divine palace, it couldn't suppress him. So that's the statue of the great emperor. No wonder it's so powerful. Boss, sister-in-law, who won? Yishui Han was excited. He felt the power of the meteor and knew how difficult the test was. We both won. Senior said that Han, Er's talent was unparalleled. Because I'm more suitable, the inheritance was given to me. Qin Hao rubbed Xiao Han's hair. He didn't expect Han, to be as good as him. Xiao Han smiled and nodded. She secretly pinched Qin Hao's waist. How old was he? Why was he rubbing her hair? Everyone was silent. Everyone looked at the two of them. Qin Hao had an outstanding temperament, and Xiao Han's smile was beautiful. They were a match made in heaven. In front of the great emperor statue, they won at the same time. How enviable. Yining Chong was so excited that she couldn't speak. She was so happy that she cried. The new moon had waited for 600 years for the return of the great emperor. And now, she seemed to have seen the Pill Emperor rise to prominence once again. Zhang Yi was ashamed and lost his arrogance. The disciples of the Judgment Hall, Tianjue Sword Palace, and the Water Jade Nation were all silent. Not far away, Chang'e Lo's chest tightened. It was as if there was a mountain in his chest. Yu Qinyang's hair swayed wildly, and his eyes became bloodshot. Shou Wuk couldn't be compared to him. Even Qin Hao, who he didn't care about before, couldn't be compared to him. Back in Golden Light City, thousands of martial artists gathered at the auction house, and the status of the Divine Palace Sun was high. At that time, Qin Hao didn't care about him and sat below while he was on the top floor. But today, he challenged the relic and stopped at the 8 emperors. He lost the chance to gain enlightenment. But Qin Hao stepped out of the imperial road and walked toward the great emperor statue to obtain the inheritance of the great emperor. The geniuses of various countries were silent. The group of people who walked out of Western Liang cheered loudly and excitedly after a short moment of absent-mindedness. Chang'e Lo and Yu Qianyang, who had the seeds of hatred buried deep in their hearts, looked at Qin Hao with even colder eyes. If it weren't for the fact that they didn't have enough people around them to take down Qin Hao, and if it weren't for the upcoming assessment of the Divine Palace, they would have taken action to kill him and seize the inheritance. Pavilion Master Qin is truly amazing. This time, even our eldest senior brother's radiance has been overshadowed. The disciples of Wuk's sword sect sincerely congratulated him. The big guys from the Arhut Palace beside them all held their noses high, as if Qin Hao was from their sect. When Master learns of this, he will definitely be gratified. During the Battle of Golden Light City, Yining Hong had stood on Qin Hao's side. Along the way, she had sacrificed too much. Many people in the sect had died, including the great elder of the sect, a half-step Yuan Emperor powerhouse. But the disciples of the Night Luo Palace didn't complain because they believed in Yining Hong, and Yining Hong believed in Qin Hao. Now, Qin Hao had stepped on the sovereign road, stood before the emperor's statue, obtained the inheritance, and suppressed all the geniuses of the continent, proving Yi Ninghong's vision. Yao nodded. She had never doubted her master. Zheng Qingqi was naturally even happier. Before entering the divine palace, you have already obtained the opportunity of becoming a great emperor. Qin Hao, I will need your guidance in the future. Shouwuk said. Emperor Realm? It was just a short journey. Their future was far from that. Let's work together. Qin Hao smiled. He naturally understood what Shouwuk meant, but no matter where he went, he was bound to be friends with him. At this moment, the sword sect of the southern region, the Arhut Palace, the Knight Luo Palace, and the Zheng clan all showed an extremely harmonious relationship with Western Liang. The scene was very warm. As an ally, Ningwu was ignored by everyone at the same time. Brother Qin Hao, I also congratulate you. And Xiao Han, I'm sorry, but maybe it's more appropriate to call you Princess Jingwei. Ning Tianxing stepped forward with an elegant demeanor. There was no trace of the harshness he had in the ruins. Thank you. Qin Hao replied very calmly, without the slightest emotion. It seems that you still blame me. This is how it should be. To be honest, I really didn't mean to target you in the ruins. Everything was for your own good. If you rely on external objects to pass the assessment, what's the point if you can't tap into your own potential? Ning Tianxing said. Let bygones be bygones. Qin Hao really didn't want to be entangled in this issue. All right, since you've obtained the great sovereign's inheritance, you'll definitely become one of the most influential figures in the continent in the future. After entering the divine palace, you and I will be brothers and sisters. After leaving the divine palace, you must follow me back to Ningwu. All right, Princess Jingwei, I'll take you back to the ancestral land of the Ning clan to see the great ancestor. At that time, it will be of great help to you and sister-in-law. Ning Tianxing said generously. The great ancestor of the third branch of the Ning family was no weaker than Ning Tianxing's cultivation. If the two sides didn't have a conflict in the ruins, Ning Tianxing's move would indeed be helpful to Qin Hao and Xiao Han. However, at this moment he said it out loud. It was suspicious that he was trying to win them over. It depends on the situation. Qin Hao replied. Xiao Han didn't say anything. After leaving the divine palace, they had many urgent matters to attend to and might not have time to go to the ancestral land of the Ning family. Any time is fine, Ning Tianxing said, unwilling to give up. If others don't want to give you face, why should the Sky Conduct Crown Prince do this? Even if someone obtains the great emperor's inheritance, they won't become a great emperor immediately. They need a long time to digest it. If their talent isn't good enough, they might not be able to comprehend the path of a great emperor. Chang Helo's voice sounded. Whether I can comprehend it or not, why should a piece of trash like you stop at the 7 sovereigns? Qin Hao looked over with sharp eyes. Since he had obtained the great emperor's inheritance, his talent was naturally recognized. Stop at the 7 sovereigns. Compared to everyone else, my talent is indeed trash. But you, Qin Hao, have stepped onto the great emperor's path and obtained the great emperor's inheritance. Why hasn't your cultivation improved? I'm 3rd level Emperor Realm. You're 8th level Emperor Realm. Who's the trashier? Chang Helo retorted. Ha ha ha. Yu Qinyang laughed. I think you're tired of living. Yi Shuihan took a step forward. In an instant, water vapor filled the air and a torrential ocean appeared behind him. 9 layers of waves rose, one after another. His aura was extremely shocking. Whoosh! Shouwuk pointed a finger. The sharp sword intent condensed into a dazzling sword light that flew towards the laughing Yu Qinyang. Yu Qinyang's eyelids twitched. Incomparably fierce flames surged out of his body and turned into a flaming tornado. Bang! The two collided and flames exploded. The sword light flew past Yu Qinyang's face, leaving behind a trail of blood. Yu Qinyang wiped the blood off his face, and a trace of shock flashed through his eyes. Compared to the previous battle in the Intent Realm, Shouwuk's sword Dao had become even more terrifying after coming out of the ruins. There was an emperor's aura around him. You laughed so loudly. It affected my mood. Shouwuk's tone was extremely cold. Yu Qinyang was speechless. He couldn't even laugh? Boom! On the other side, Yi Shuihan pushed out with both of his palms, and the ocean transformed into numerous water dragons that engulfed Chang Halo. Chang Halo flicked his finger 5 times in the air, and 5 sound lines exploded out. The sound lines intertwined into rays of light and turned into a pentagram that shot up to the sky. After the attack, a trace of blood seeped from the corner of Yishuhin's mouth. However, Chang Halo was also forced back 3 steps. His stomach was churning. He clutched his chest, as if he hadn't expected that a random person standing next to Qin Hao would be qualified to contend with him. "I can cripple you in less than 3 months." Yi Shuihan licked the corner of his mouth. His eyes were filled with fighting spirit. He was 2nd-level Emperor Realm, while Chang Halo was 3rd-level Emperor Realm. Even without using soul power, he was slightly suppressed. Shameless boasting. Chang Halo was disdainful, but a serious look flashed through his eyes. Buzz! At this moment, there was a violent tremor in the air above the central island. A terrifying suppressive force descended. Thousands of candidates felt like they were being stepped on at the same time. Then, a figure slowly appeared in the air. His aura was arrogant as he looked down on thousands of geniuses. He said loudly, "The Divine Palace examination begins." Chapter 1407. Above the central island, a powerhouse from the Divine Palace descended. His voice spread, full of majesty. Thousands of people looked up and saw a tall figure standing in the sky. He was wearing a black robe that fluttered in the wind, surrounded by platinum flames. His aura was extremely shocking. Obviously, this person was an emperor-level powerhouse. Black-robed Emperor Yuan? Qin Hao's heart suddenly shrank, and he became alert. After the Battle of Golden Light City, Ning Sangsong chased after Li Wanji and left. Later, when he arrived at Imperial Fall Bay, he met an unknown powerhouse, Emperor Yuan. The other party was also wearing a black robe. According to Li Wanji, the black-robed Emperor Yuan defeated him with 1 palm. The former ancestor of the martial Ning Empire, Ning Sangsong, was easily killed by the other party. At this moment, the black-robed Emperor Yuan was floating above his head like a grim reaper. Even though Qin Hao's temperament was different from ordinary people, he couldn't keep calm. Zheng Qingqi next to him was the same. There was even a flash of horror in his eyes. Don't act rashly. Even if this person is wearing a black robe, he might not be the murderer. Qin Hao secretly transmitted his voice. Zheng Qingqi swallowed hard and slowly calmed down. Indeed, they couldn't determine that the other party was the murderer based on a robe. First of all, the black-robed Emperor Yuan presided over the assessment above as a powerhouse from the Divine Palace. Apart from the emperor-level oppression, there was no killing intent on him. Moreover, Qin Hao and Zheng Qingqi could feel that although the black-robed Emperor Yuan's aura was strong, it wasn't stronger than Li Wanji's. This proved that the other party hadn't stepped into the realm of the Great Emperor, which didn't match the strength of the murderer who killed Ning Sangsong. Of course, they couldn't rule out the possibility that he suppressed his cultivation. Since the other party was here to preside over the assessment, they could only take 1 step at a time. Greetings, Senior Divine Palace. Thousands of people saluted towards the sky in unison. The scene was quite spectacular. There are a total of 5 arenas on the island. Each arena has a different meaning and will test your ability. As long as you pass one of them, you can enter the Divine Palace and seek the Emperor's path. The black-robed Emperor Yuan ignored the respect of the people and looked down. His cold voice was emotionless. He pointed to the first arena and continued, "The first arena, the war drum platform. You will pass if you sound 3 war drums. The second place is the Golden Bell platform. Raise the Golden Bell 3 feet above the ground. Pass. The third location is the Stone Statue platform. Communicate with one of the statues to pass. The fourth place is the Divine Grass platform. Infuse your mental energy into it, and the grass will grow to a height of 1 zhong. The fifth test is the Emperor's Mirror. If you can project your own image into the mirror, you will pass. The testing direction of the 5 arenas is different. Physical martial artists who are good at brute force can choose the war drum platform for the challenge. Chi martial artists can choose the second golden bell platform. Spiritual power martial artists can choose the stone statue platform. The fourth flower bed, divine grass, test the martial artist's affinity with medicinal herbs. As for the fifth emperor mirror, any cultivator who did not have the confidence to pass the first 4 arenas could give it a try. In other words, the fifth arena is suitable for everyone to challenge. The black-robed Emperor Yuan's words were concise and capable. He didn't say much, but he expressed his meaning completely. The thousands of participants below were not fools. They were able to last until the end, and all of them had extremely high comprehension abilities. Almost all of them understood the simple sentence. Anyway, everyone had different abilities. Choosing the most suitable arena to challenge would undoubtedly increase the success rate. The fifth Emperor's mirror was the last chance for the losers. If they stood in front of the mirror and reflected the figure of the martial artist, they would be considered to have passed and could enter the divine palace. Of course, this is only the minimum requirement. The more war drums you sound, and the higher the golden bell is suspended, it proves that you are stronger. After entering the divine palace, the sect will adopt different levels of teaching according to the performance of each disciple. The same goes for the divine grass platform and the emperor's mirror. The higher the divine grass grows, the clearer the figure in the mirror is, proving that you are better. Begin. After the black-robed powerhouse finished speaking, his figure directly disappeared into the air. He didn't have the slightest intention of supervising. Suddenly, the central island was filled with sighs. The cultivators thought that even if there was no supervision at the scene, no one would cheat and fake the results. Who would dare to cheat in the Divine Palace's test? Hao, what do you think? Zhou Wudao didn't rush to the stage to try. Just by looking at the greenish-black drum skin on the first war drum platform, he knew that it was definitely not an easy task to sound it. The black-robed Emperor Yuan gave the lowest standard, which was to sound 3 drums to pass. If it was any other place, the thousands of geniuses present would definitely not take it seriously. The key was that the war drum platform belonged to the Divine Palace. Who would dare to underestimate it? You are someone who has completed the Emperor's Road. What are you afraid of? Hao smiled. My personal suggestion is that you go to the Golden Bell. With Zhou Wudao's ability, it was definitely not difficult to pass. Little Melon, Sea Sand, everyone from the Arhut Palace, go to the war drum platform. Yao, take your junior sisters to the stone statue platform or the golden bell platform. Wuk, you can choose on your own. Hao gave suggestions one by one. In the sword cultivation lineage, everyone cultivated different swords. Some cultivated heavy swords, and some cultivated swords of killing intent. Their directions were different, and of course, they couldn't be lumped together. Okay, Showuk nodded and went to the first war drum platform by himself. As a sword cultivator, he would try the brute force platform built for physical martial artists. At this moment, everyone split up. At the same time, the other martial artists on the island were divided into 5 torrents, choosing their own positions. Some went to the war drum platform, while others went to the golden bell platform. Each platform occupied a large area, and it wouldn't feel crowded when standing on it. As for the order of challenge, no one was in a hurry. After all, the Divine Palace didn't give a time limit, so everyone had a chance. Hao glanced at the 5 platforms. For him, there was no difference. He could test strength, vitality, spiritual power, and soul power. However, if he only chose one, the Divine Grass platform was undoubtedly the most suitable. As Dende, his affinity with herbs was naturally beyond doubt. But Hao didn't go to the Divine Grass platform. He took Xiao Han and the others to the war drum platform to see how the others reacted when they beat the drums. For these 5 platforms, the better the assessment results, the higher the status in the Divine Palace in the future. They just needed to satisfy one of the criteria. But the black-robed Emperor Yuan didn't restrict their performance. So, what if they satisfied all 5 assessments? How high would their position be in the Divine Palace? Hao felt that he should give it a try. Chapter 1408. There weren't many martial artists on the battle drum platform. There were thousands of contestants on the island, and about 800 of them stayed here. The 800 challengers were all tall and sturdy, strength-type martial artists who specialized in cultivating their bodies. The battle drums on the platform were huge, and there were 9 of them arranged in a line. When a martial artist successfully sounded the first drum and struck the second one, the power would be transmitted through the first drum to the second drum. So on and so forth. The third strike would pass through the first 2 drums and strike the third drum. But every time the drum sounded, there would be an incomparably terrifying backlash that would strike the martial artist's body. Moreover, each strike was stronger than the last. When the drum sounded 3 times, the power would be multiplied, and after 3 beats, the power would become incomparably turbulent. The minimum standard set by the black-robed Emperor Yuan was to sound 3 drums in order to pass. Qin Hao and Xiao Han had arrived, and the challenge was in progress. In front of the drum, the figures of martial artists alternated, and the sound of tremors continued. The 9 drums were extremely heavy, and not everyone had the ability to sound them. After watching for about 10 minutes, no one had successfully challenged 3 drums. In just 10 minutes, more than 300 people had been eliminated. Let me try. An Arhut Palace disciple stepped out, snorting heavily. He had a stalwart figure and a shiny head. He only wore shorts from head to toe, revealing his sturdy thighs and bulging muscles, giving off a valiant feeling. The disciple stood in front of the drum, roared, and punched. Boom! An incomparably heavy drum sound spread out, causing the disciple's ears to ring and his eyes to become dizzy. Then, a surge of power surged into his body, destroying his body, meridians, and limbs. The disciple gritted his teeth and let out a beast-like roar. Golden flames rose as he punched the drum again. Boom! The incomparably terrifying power penetrated the first drum and successfully sounded the second one. However, what he got in return was an even more terrifying recoil. The Arhut Palace's disciple, named Liang Tai's entire body was instantly filled with the sound of cracking bones. Liang Tai, hold on for me. Luo Yuliang looked nervous. Liang Tai's talent was extraordinary. Although he was stopped at the 4 Emperors' pressure after entering the ruins, he used the pressure to push himself to the limit and broke through to the Emperor realm, stepping into the first level of the Emperor realm. There were very few outstanding disciples like Liang Tai in the Arhut Palace. Among the accompanying team, Liang Tai's strength could be ranked in the top 5. Hearing Luo Yuliang's encouragement, Liang Tai's eyes became bloodshot. He suppressed the violent energy that was rushing into his body. A light flashed behind him, and a broad-backed, multicolored tiger appeared. Roar! Opening his source spirit, Liang Tai sent out his third fist. Dong! Another thunderous sound rang out, and the third drum finally sounded. It was the first time someone had successfully challenged it. Puff! At the same time, Liang Tai, who was standing in front of the drum, was shaken by the 3 drum beats. He felt as if his whole body was being torn apart. He couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood, which flowed down his chest. Then, he threw another punch. However, this punch did not produce a 4th echo. Liang Tai was so tired that he collapsed to the ground. He opened his mouth and smiled foolishly at his fellow disciples. In any case, he succeeded in his challenge and gave his junior brothers a good start. Big brother, how many rings do you think I can make? Xiaohua asked Qin Hao. 9 rings. Qin Hao answered without hesitation. Xiaohua was slightly taken aback. Then, he straightened his face and felt the power of the war drums up close. It was truly astonishing. But if Big Brother said he could make 9 rings, then he definitely could. The challenges continued. Cultivators took turns, and the pace was fast. Liang Tai succeeded in his challenge with 3 rings. Many more monsters appeared after that, and one of them even managed to make 7 rings. That was the best result so far. However, even more challengers failed. The disciples of the Arhut Palace were all of high quality. All 8 of them passed, even though some of them made very weak sounds when they faced the 3rd ring. Still, the war drums sounded in the end. It's my turn now. Luo Yuliang walked toward the war drums. He threw a punch, and the ferocious fist energy turned into a beam of light. It pierced through 5 drums and hit the 6th, producing a resounding boom. Then, all 6 drums sounded in unison. This guy is amazing. The spectators were quite surprised. Luo Yuliang's expression was solemn. Golden origin energy surged around him as he used all his strength in his 2nd-level Emperor Realm cultivation. He threw another punch. Dong! The 7th ring rang out, matching the highest result so far. However, at this moment, Luo Yuliang's complexion changed. His entire face turned pale. Then he spat out a mouthful of blood at his feet and staggered a few steps back. Young Lord! Young Lord! The disciples of the Arhot Palace were worried. Don't come over. Luo Yuliang waved his hand to stop the people who were approaching. He clenched his teeth tightly, and his gaze was fierce. He took large strides and sprinted towards the war drum. He ran like the wind, as if he had transformed into a giant beast that was sprinting. When he got close, the fist that was retracted under his armpit flickered with incomparably intense soul light. With a loud roar, his fist smashed towards the war drum. This strike caused the space to emit a cracking sound, as if this fist had swung over a heavy mountain. Dong! An incomparably heavy drumbeat reverberated through the air, inspiring the hearts of the spectators. The 8th echo was a success. However, the moment the fist landed, Luo Yuliang was also sent flying into the air, flying a full 5 feet high. His face landed on the ground below Qin Hao's feet. I made 8 rings, huh? Luo Yuliang's mouth was full of blood. He spat out a broken tooth and laughed wildly with pride. I congratulate you on behalf of the 2nd Master. Qin Hao helped him up with a smile. Luo Yuliang was the youngest son of the southern region's Emperor Luo. The strength of his bloodline was astonishing, so it wasn't surprising that he could make 8 rings. If his realm was higher, he might be able to make 9 rings. Luo Yuliang laughed and hugged the disciples of the Arhot Palace warmly. He had made 8 rings, so his result was awesome enough. He was a model example of bringing glory to his ancestors. At this time, Saioba walked toward the war drums and hammered a fist. A rumbling sound spread out, but before the first ring had subsided, he hammered a 2nd time. For a moment, the sound of banging was frequent. At the same time, a powerful aura, mixed with incomparable recoil, seeped into Saioba's body from the war drums. The raging power destroyed his meridians and flesh, weakening his physical strength. However, he didn't seem to feel it and continued to throw punches. Dong! 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 In an instant, above the war drum platform, the violent drum sounds connected together. The dense sound waves stirred the space, and the spiritual energy in the area also went berserk. The terrifying drum sounds rushed into the ears of the martial artists. It was as if their eardrums were torn and their brains were in chaos. Many people covered their ears with their hands and screamed in horror. Was the guy who was beating the drums a human? When the 7th drum sound rang out, it was as if a tsunami had occurred in the sea. The earth-shattering drum sound shook many people on the spot and made them foam at the mouth and faint on the ground. Although Luo Yuliang had made a lot of noise before, and even punched through 6 war drums, his technique was simply too gentle compared to Saioba's. The sound of Saioba's every punch was much more violent than Luo Yuliang's. The overbearing power intertwined with the drum sounds, forming a terrible airflow that swirled around Saioba's body. It was as if Qin Hao had hit him with a flame dragon revolving sky slash. The sharp airflow was like a blade that wanted to cut him into meat paste. Saioba roared and threw another punch. No matter how the airflow raged, he stood there like a mad demon. At this moment, the 8th drum sound spread through the world like thunder, as if it had attracted the power of heaven. An incomparably terrifying power fell from the sky and fell on Saioba's body, crushing his flesh and blood. Roar! A dazzling light bloomed, and a huge shadow of a green ox rose into the sky, enveloping Tsaogwa and resisting the power of the great path that fell from the sky. Immediately, the shadow of the green ox turned into a mass of air and entered his body. At this moment, Tsaogwa's soul entered his body and turned into a half-human, half-beast. He bared his fangs, swung his tail, and had a strong body that was far stronger than ordinary people. He looked like the beast god that had descended. Immediately, Tsaogwa threw the ninth punch. Boom! The beast's fist hit the drum surface. Like a flying sound wave, it pierced through the first 8 drums and shook the ninth one. At this moment, a layer of invisible halo appeared on the ninth drum, like an invisible wall of air in front of it, preventing the power of this punch from coming into contact with it. However, in the sky above, the power of the great path descended and kept attacking Tsaogwa. Even if his soul entered his body, he could not resist it. With a muffled groan, Tsaogwa staggered and fell to the ground. A large amount of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Qin Hao's heart tightened. For a moment, he really wanted to shout, "Enough!" But he knew that even if he shouted, Tsaogwa might not agree. In fact, even though he was knocked to the ground by the power of the great path, Tsaogwa still did not give up. He got up and threw another punch. Since Big Brother said that he could make 9 echoes, then he must be able to rumble, rumble, rumble. The second attack carried an indomitable momentum. Tsaogwa was like a demonic beast that went berserk. The fierce fist pierced through the 8 drums again and reached the 9th one. But no matter how hard he tried, the fist could not touch it. Between the 8th and 9th drums, there seemed to be a peerless master standing. With a casual wave of his hand, Tsaogwa's power was neutralized. "Open for me." Amidst the hoarse roar, an incomparably shocking aura erupted. Tsaogwa's beast form hummed and grew another foot taller. He had reached the 7th transformation of the great bull demonic power. Under the suppression of the great path, the power of his bloodline was sublimated at this critical moment. At this moment, Tsaogwa's surging soul power was even more intense. It wanted to break free from the shackles of the great path, and the barrier of the first-level Emperor Realm was broken. His aura soared. Second-level Emperor Realm. Boom! The fist broke through the invisible barrier and hit the 9th drum. 9 drums sounded in unison. Oh my God! 9 war drums. The cultivators who had not fainted were shocked beyond words. Oh my, how could he make 9 echoes? My record, my record. Luo Yuliang was so anxious that he jumped up and down. The disciples of the sect hurriedly comforted him. He was not angry at Tsaogwa, but he was not satisfied that the record he had worked so hard to set was broken just like that. 9 war drums. Among the disciples of the Divine Palace, Tsaogwa is the #1 physical martial artist. He will definitely be taught by an elder. Showa praised. According to this result, Tsaogwa would definitely enter the Divine Palace, and his future status would definitely be high. Big Brother, I did it. Tsaogwa's back was drenched in sweat. Even though he was exhausted, his face was filled with great joy. Amazing. Qin Hao gave him a thumbs up. Just as Showuk said, Tsaogwa would definitely be taught by an elder after entering the Divine Palace. That elder would be a great emperor with great brute strength. This was a blessing for Tsaogwa. Boom! Boom, 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 boom. Before the crowd could recover from their shock, a series of drum beats erupted. Qin Hao looked over and saw that Lei Jiao had punched through 7 drums. Chapter 1409. On the battle drum platform, Luo Yuliang, the youngest son of the southern region's Emperor Realm Luo Di, broke through 6 drums with a single punch. He activated his bloodline and soul power and struck the drum 8 times, setting a new record. After that, Tsaogwa of Western Liang struck the drum 8 times, causing the heavenly might to envelop him. The pressure of the great Tao caused his bloodline to sublimate. The demon ox physique reached the 7th transformation and broke through the 2nd level of the Emperor Realm. 9 drums sounded in unison, breaking Luo Yuliang's record. Lei Jiao, the inheritor of the 2 light emperors of the East Continent's Lei Chuan Hall of Judgment, broke through 7 drums with a single punch. He was even stronger than Luo Yuliang and Xiaogua. For a moment, everyone on the drum platform was shocked. Is it difficult? Lei Jiao looked at the two people who made a move. His calm face was full of disapproval. Then, he raised his arm and raged golden flames raged under his feet. His aura of the fourth level of the Emperor realm skyrocketed as he punched again. Dong! The drums sounded 8 times. Is it difficult? He asked. Luo Yuliang had hit 8 drums at his limit. If Xiaogua hadn't broken through at the critical moment, he would have stopped at 8. But for Lei Jiao, 8 drums were easy to break. After he finished speaking, an intense light enveloped Lei Jiao's body. A majestic soul power surged and flickered. Lei Jiao didn't dare to be careless when facing the 9th drum. Since he was the inheritor of the Light Emperor, his origin soul must be light, pure light. Between heaven and earth, light wrapped around his body. For a moment, Lei Jiao's position was so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. He let out a deep roar and threw a destructive punch forward. The terrifying fist light pierced through the 8 drums and shook toward the 9th. The 9th drum emitted an invisible wall of qi. It was as if a peerless expert was standing in the middle. Even though Lei Jiao's fist was monstrous, it dissipated and disappeared. Ha! Lei Jiao sneered, but he wasn't discouraged. On the contrary, his eyes flickered with an even stronger battle intent. A layer of terrifying lightning power swam around his body and intertwined with the light. At this moment, Lei Jiao's aura became extremely violent and terrifying. Lightning and light souls. Shouwuk was surprised. No wonder Lei Jiao was so arrogant. The destructive power of each of his soul powers was shocking and not inferior to flames. Both of his souls were unleashed, and his cultivation at the 4th level of the Thunder WRM Emperor stage rose to an unimaginable level. Lightning and light flashed wildly on his body at the same time, and he looked like a thunder god that had descended to the world. His eyes formed balls of lightning as he roared madly. Winding lightning energy flew out from his fist, and it was mixed with an extremely intense light as it charged forward. Dong! The 8 infiltration drums struck the 9th beat, the same result as Xiaogua, 9 beats. At this moment, the countless martial artists on the war drum platform looked at the Thunder Flood Dragon with awe. Not at all. The Thunder Flood Dragon scattered its 2 souls, clapped its hands, and walked away in a relaxed manner. It seemed as if it was mocking Xiaogua. Damn it! Xiaogua stepped forward, wanting to do it again. Forget it. Qinhao stopped him. With Guadi's current realm, it was not easy for him to beat the war drum 9 times. He was indeed not Lei Jiao's opponent. Not convinced? If it's Qinhao, you won't be able to do it. The Thunder Flood Dragon looked at Qinhao. In fact, his intention was not to target Xiaogua, but to force Qinhao to make a move. In Yunming Mountain, the two of them had fought for a while, but there was no clear winner. However, on the Imperial Road, the Thunder Flood Dragon was suppressed by the might of the 10 emperors and could not move forward. On the other hand, Qinhao had stepped out of the Imperial Road and obtained the inheritance of the great emperors. How could the Thunder Flood Dragon be balanced? Even if his talent was not as good as Qinhao's, he still wanted to see how strong the person who had obtained the inheritance of the great emperors was. It's just a small matter. Is it necessary? Qinhao smiled and said. He had no intention of making a move. Let me have a try. Shouwuk walked to the war drum and pointed forward with a seemingly relaxed finger. Suddenly, a strong sword qi burst out from his fingertip, and a sharp sound rang out in the air. The sword qi pierced through the 8 drums, and the 8 drums sounded together. The Thunder Flood Dragon's expression changed. Not only him, but everyone on the war drum platform was shocked, including Xiaogua and Luo Yuliang. Others could not make 3 sounds even if they tried their best. Even if a genius made a move, few people could make 7 sounds. Only when Xiaogua appeared did he make 9 sounds. But Lei Jiao was even more outstanding than Qi Xiaogua. He made the 9 drums sound in unison without any effort. At this time, Shouwuk made a move. He was a weak swordsman who was not good at the way of attack. With only his sword will, he penetrated the 8 drums so easily. He was simply a monster. Qin Hao smiled. Those who had passed the 3 tests of the great emperors were naturally talented. Naturally, the Thunder Flood Dragon, who was stuck on the Imperial Road, could not be compared to him. What shocked the Thunder Flood Dragon? At the same time, he could also motivate Guadi. Showuk did not look proud. Next, he was going to make the 9th sound. At this moment, there was a dazzling sword light growing from under his feet. It was like a blooming lotus. It was brilliant, but also gave people a sense of crisis. The infinite sword will turn into an indestructible will. The innate power of the rules of sword condensed into a sword finger. A burst of emperor will spread. Showuk's eyes became sharp. He flicked his finger. Whoosh! The unstoppable sword chi flew back and forth. In front of Showuk's rules of sword, the invisible obstacle behind the 8th drum seemed to not exist at all. The sword chi shook the surface of the 9th drum. Dong! 9 sounds surrounded him. The sound of the drum soared into the sky. The 9th sound was complete. Oh my God, is this guy really just a swordsman? Isn't this sword intent a little too terrifying? Who can block his sword? Everyone present was a genius. However, when there was a person who could make geniuses tremble in fear, it was obvious how outstanding Showuk's performance was. 9 sounds of the war drum is indeed very simple. Showuk withdrew his sword finger and said to Qin Hao, "Let's go." Since he had personally verified it, Qin Hao should not bother to make a move. After all, there was a big gap between a person who had withstood 3 tests from the Emperor's statue and a peerless genius like Qin Hao, who had broken 4 tests and obtained the great Emperor's inheritance. Showuk could sound the war drum 9 times without using his full strength. Qin Hao could naturally do the same. Okay. Qin Hao took Xiao Han's hand and followed Showuk to the Golden Bell platform. At this moment, Lei Jiao was frozen in place. He no longer had the momentum from before. Looking at Showuk's back, his eyes were full of shock. Was this the ability of a genius who was qualified to withstand the Emperor statue's test? Showuk had only withstood 3 tests. He had not broken all 3. People who were more outstanding than him were Qingji Han and Xiao Han. As for Qin Hao, he was the one who had obtained the inheritance of the great emperor. Lei Jiao didn't dare to think any further. He turned his stiff neck and looked at the 9 war drums. The 9 war drums were majestic, but at this moment, the image of the war drums being crushed by someone's fist appeared in his mind. If Qin Hao really broke the war drum, how terrifying would the scene be? At the Golden Clock Tower, a huge golden bell landed on the ground. Looking up, it was 10 meters tall and suffused with a layer of noble golden luster. It was solemn and dignified, like a holy object that suppressed the heavens and earth. Compared to the martial artists on the war drum platform, the number of people on the Golden Bell platform was obviously several times more. After all, there were relatively few corporeal martial cultivators among the total number of omens. The majority of martial artists were Qi cultivators who were proficient in Yuan Qi attacks. The Golden Bell platform was the place where Qi warriors were tested. A martial artist had to use Qi to control the bell. Only when the bell was 3 feet above the ground would it pass the test. At this moment, Zhou Wudao and Zhang Yi were both here, as well as Yu Qianyang and Chang Helo. Yu Qianyang majored in Yuan Qi, as did Zhou Wudao. Zhang Yi was the descendant of Zhang Lang and had received the inheritance of his ancestor. He cultivated the domineering blade technique and had a battle technique called the 9 Heavens Consecutive Strikes. There were few people in the world who could match him. However, his blade technique required strong Yuan Qi support, not pure strength. So in comparison, he was more suitable to challenge the Golden Clock Tower. Qin Hao came here. Just like the war drum platform, martial artists took turns and the challenges were in full swing. However, the Golden Bell was 3 feet above the ground. It seemed easy to rise, but it was not easy to do. The cruel elimination rate was no less than that of the war drum platform. Why are you here? Do you also want to challenge the Golden Clock Tower? Zhou Wudao rubbed his hands and was about to make a move when he suddenly saw Qin Hao, Xiao Han, and Shou Wuk walking over. The war drum platform was boring, so we came to take a look, Shou Wuk said in a calm tone. So, senior brother has already tried? Several disciples of the sword faction who stayed on the Golden Clock Tower came forward and asked. Yes, your senior brother's sword made 9 sounds, and the sound of the drum soared to the sky. Even the Thunder Dragon was dumbfounded. Qin Hao laughed. This. Zhou Wudao was speechless. 9 sounds of the sword, a perfect result, and it was boring? Shou Wuk was here to slap his face. Senior brother's swordsmanship is unparalleled. Even if you beat the drum with sword intent, you still beat thousands of martial artists. Learn from senior brother. Several disciples of the sword faction were naturally very proud and laughed heartily. In the crowd, Yu Qianyang and Chang Lo saw this and could not help but feel their hearts tighten. Shou Wuk went to the brute force stage to beat the drum as a swordsman, but he also achieved 9 sounds of drums. If he was on the Golden Clock Tower, wouldn't the Golden Clock Tower be 9 feet above the ground? Although the 5 arenas tested martial artists in different directions, the standard was the same. Having seen too many people fail, they naturally knew how difficult it was to raise the Golden Clock Tower 9 feet high. Even Chang Lo, the #1 talent in entertainment in the southern region, felt a little guilty. At this time, 2 pairs of eyes looked at Shou Wuk with fear and a hint of jealousy. The real #1 talent in the southern region was indeed excellent. With Shou Wuk's performance on the Battle Drum Tower, he would enter the Divine Palace and be invited by the elders to become a personal disciple of a great emperor. Yu Qianyang and Chang Lo, however, had an unknown future. It's only 9 sounds. If Qin Hao were to fight, his result would be higher than mine. It's not worth bragging about. You go and challenge him. Shou Wuk preached to his fellow disciples. The 9 drums were made of the skin of some kind of demon beast and were abnormally smooth. Moreover, each side was reinforced by a matrix. Even if Shou Wuk was born with the rules of swordsmanship, he could not destroy them. But he knew that Qin Hao definitely had the abnormal power to crush the drums. Yes, senior brother. The sword sect disciples accepted the order and turned toward the golden bell. They were all brimming with fighting spirit. With such an outstanding senior brother as their role model, how could they not work hard? The challenge had been going on for more than an hour. A third of the nearly 3,000 cultivators on the Golden Bell platform had been eliminated. Some of them went to the Battle Drum Tower, while others went to the stone statue platform. They were obviously unwilling to give up and wanted to try to pass with other talents. No one would go to the Great Emperor platform unless it was absolutely necessary. It was the last way to enter the Divine Palace. At this time, it was the turn of a sword sect disciple in front of the Golden Bell. Qi roiled around this disciple. His white robes fluttered, and golden flames rose from his body. His aura was first-level Emperor realm. His name was Jian Chang, and he was an outstanding disciple of the sword sect's outer sect. With his current cultivation, he was qualified to enter the inner sect if he returned to the sect. The web updated the fastest. On the computer, an incomparably strong sword intent spread out and turned into a raging storm. Jian Chang stood in front of the golden bell and stomped his feet heavily on the ground. He wrapped his chi around the bell with his consciousness and roared, "Rise!" Hum! The golden bell vibrated and swayed under the support of Jian Chang's chi. It slowly rose from the ground. 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, 1 foot. Large beads of sweat rolled down Jian Chang's cheeks and wet his clothes. When the bell rose 2 feet, Jian Chang's legs trembled and veins crawled all over his neck. Chapter 1410. When a martial artist controlled the bell with chi, the suppression force would return to the martial artist. Whether it was the physical body, spirit, or will, they would all be tested. When the golden bell was 2 feet above the ground, it suddenly bloomed with a dazzling golden light. A vast aura shrouded Jian Chang, causing his legs to tremble even more. Sweat rolled down his face as a sense of suffocation poured into Jian Chang's spirit. His palms were like towering mountains that wanted to suppress him. Without hesitation, he released his source spirit, and a sharp sword flashed out from behind him. At this moment, Jian Chang's aura suddenly rose, forming a raging storm that lifted the golden bell another foot, reaching 3 feet. Hold on. Don't lose face for the sword sect. You still have the ability to continue. The sword sect disciple clenched his fists nervously. Jian Chang howled at the top of his lungs. Even though he released his source spirit and exhausted all his strength, he was trapped under the golden bell. The golden light was like the suppression of the great Tao, making him feel like his soul was being crushed. He felt like he was turning into a meat patty. Buzz! At this moment, Jian Chang's aura suddenly erupted and broke through the shackles of the realm. He broke through another layer, and his cultivation reached the second level of the Emperor realm. This situation was very similar to Tsiogwa. At the same time, the golden bell that was 3 feet above the ground rose another foot. 4 feet. Jian Chang finally couldn't hold on anymore. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, and he fell to the ground. He dissipated his soul power and was drenched in sweat like a rooster that had fallen into the river. New August 1st Chinese network. 4 feet. I did it. Jian Chang laughed happily. Rising 4 feet, he had already obtained the qualification to enter the Divine Palace. Moreover, he had broken through a layer. For a time, many martial artists looked at him with envy. Next, several other disciples of the sword sect challenged. One of them rose 5 feet, causing a sensation. The weakest one rose 3 feet, and all of them passed. As for the disciples of the Blazing Sun Temple, only 5 passed. 3 did not meet the requirements and lost the qualification to enter the Divine Palace. In contrast, the Sword Sect was also a top force in the southern region, but the performance of the Sword Sect was superior to that of the Sacred Temple. Yu Qinyang stepped forward and stopped 1 meter away from the golden bell. He stared at the golden bell, and the light in his eyes turned into 2 balls of flame. Under his gaze, the golden bell actually left the ground and floated up as if it was wrapped in an invisible force. This person is strong, someone commented. Whether he was a genius or not could be seen through his moves. It was obvious that Yu Qinyang's ability surpassed most of the warriors present. Under Yu Qinyang's gaze, the golden bell rose little by little. 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches. 1 foot, 2 feet, it continued to rise. Although Yu Qinyang didn't release his primordial qi and just stood there with his eyes wide open, the golden bell rose 3 feet, causing an uproar. Acting coquettish, Zhou Wudao was very disdainful of this kind of trick. If it were him, he could raise the bell by 5 feet with a wave of his hand. If it went any further, he might have to bring out some real skills. Yu Qinyang was immersed in it. He seemed to enjoy the process of shocking others. His eyes were still wide open, and the more he stared, the wider his eyes became. His will shrouded the golden bell, and his psyche power wrapped around it, lifting it up layer by layer. When he was about 4 feet away from Yu Qinyang, the golden bell's radiance exploded. Suddenly, a powerful force descended and poured into the top of Yu Qinyang's head. Yu Qinyang's mind was in a trance. He knew that he had reached his limit and had to use his unique skill. Give me a promotion. Golden flames surged. Although he hadn't had any fortuitous encounters in the statue ruins, Yu Qinyang's months of tempering at Emperor Drop Bay had allowed him to reach 2nd level Emperor realm. In the past, he and Shouwuk's cultivation had been equal. After the statue ruins, Shouwuk had reached peak 3rd level Emperor realm, surpassing him, the Holy Prince of the Sacred Hall. Although his cultivation progress wasn't as fast as Shouwuk's, Yu Qinyang's talent was still quite good. At this moment, his cultivation erupted, and the golden bell began to rise rapidly. It broke through the 5 feet mark and reached 6 feet. This scene caused the hearts of the cultivators to clench, and they all revealed looks of surprise. 6 feet. So far, the result of the bell rising to 6 feet was already very outstanding. Of course, Yu Qinyang wasn't satisfied with this result. He raised his head to look at the golden bell and sketched the silhouettes of Qin Hao and Shou Wuk in his mind. It was as if the golden bell had transformed into Qin Hao and Shou Wuk themselves. The boundless power of the great Tao descended, and it was as if the two of them were smiling and about to suppress him with their palms. Buzz! Surging flames spewed out, and tongues of fire spread. The temperature of the golden bell platform rose sharply. Yu Qianyang's eyes became more and more fierce. The golden bell was his enemy. His soul power intertwined with his vital qi, and it was like golden lava spewing out. The golden bell shook violently and rose another foot. 7 feet. At this moment, the astonishment in the eyes of the cultivators gradually turned into faint fear. The bell rose to 7 feet. Obviously, Yu Qianyang was a genius among geniuses. Eldest senior brother is mighty. In terms of realm, he was 1 level higher than Yu Qianyang. In terms of soul power, he wasn't weaker than Yu Qianyang. The perfect result of the bell rising by 9 feet would be set by him. As he walked, Changhe Lo turned to look at Qin Hao and Shou Wuk and said, 9 sword echoes? I will let you all witness the miracle of the bell rising by 9 feet. Shou Wuk had made 9 sword echoes on the battle drum platform. That was his ability. Qin Hao didn't seem to be challenging him, which meant that there was a problem. Did he not dare? Or was he disdainful? Changhe Lo believed that the former was more convincing. After all, the Emperor statue's test varied from person to person. The higher the realm, the more difficult it might be. Even though Qin Hao had broken through 4 tests, his cultivation base wasn't high. He was only a Yuan Venerate. For people like Ning Tianxing and Shou Wuk, who had stepped into the Emperor realm, there was actually a slight unfairness. Challenging the Golden Bell was different. The black-robed Yuan Emperor had set the minimum standard of 3 feet. No matter what the challenger's cultivation base was, the standard wouldn't change. Since Qin Hao didn't have the confidence to challenge the battle drum platform, he naturally couldn't achieve 9 feet. Changhe Lo could do it. Therefore, he wanted Qin Hao to see it with his own eyes. He wanted to see how those who didn't get the great emperor's inheritance climbed to the top of the sacred palace step by step with their own abilities. At that time, how ashamed would Qin Hao, who had obtained the great emperor's inheritance, be? Rise! After a simple word, the golden bell floated up strangely in front of Changhe Lo, 1 foot above the ground. Rise again, Changhe Lo said. Buzz! The golden bell was 2 feet above the ground. Continue. Buzz! The bell rose 3 feet. At this time, an invisible pressure fell down, and Changhe Lo felt a force pressing down on his head. Then he stretched out his slender white fingers and flicked the golden bell several times. Rise, 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 rise. Pa-pa-pa-pa. The crisp sound of his fingers rang out, as if he was hitting the strings of a zither. Several zither sounds spread out in the surrounding space, rushing into the interior of the golden bell. As Changhe Luo chanted, with each word, the bell would rise a little higher. After 4 words, the bell rose 6 feet. Another powerful guy, someone said. Without using his vitality or his source spirit, Changhe Lo easily made the golden bell rise 6 feet above the ground. How outstanding was that? Many members of the Xianyuan family looked at Changhe Lo. They had to admit that this zither genius from the Spirit Beast sect was indeed outstanding. Xianyuan Wuying's vision wasn't wrong about this. It was all because the southern region had Shou Wuk, who overshadowed Changhe Lo's brilliance. Otherwise, this person's future wouldn't be lower than Yu Qianyang's. Even now, Yu Qianyang might not be able to beat Changhe Lo. Thinking of this, the members of the Xianyuan family thought of Xianyuan Jie. If Xianyuan Jie didn't die in Qin Hao's hands, he would also be able to easily make the bell rise 6 feet. Yu Qianyang secretly glanced at Changhe Lo. He didn't pay much attention to this person before. In the entire southern region, only Shou Wuk was qualified to make him look at him seriously. At this time, Changhe Lo easily rose 6 feet. Yu Qianyang suddenly felt that this guy, who climbed up by hugging someone's thigh, was actually a powerful guy. Qin Hao, how many feet do you think he can rise? Showuk asked. 8 feet is the limit. Qin Hao replied. He didn't add any emotions and was just stating the facts. 8 feet. The soft voice didn't escape Chang Helou's ears. He had been paying attention to Qin Hao. Hearing that he could only rise 8 feet, Chang Helou smiled and turned his head. If I rise 9 feet, do you dare to give up the great emperor's inheritance? Give it to me and admit that you are a waste. You have the face to ask? Xiaogu said. 3 battles, 3 defeats. Fengchang fled in a sorry state. Hundreds of people in the Yunming Mountain couldn't take down Qin Hao alone. He had never seen such a shameless person. Yes, Qin Hao replied. What if you can't? Chang Heloual was taken aback. Do you dare to cripple yourself? Qin Hao asked. The chance of killing him was very small. During the assessment, Qin Hao didn't dare to do so rashly. Okay, Chang Helou promised. If I can't rise 9 feet, I will cripple myself. Otherwise, he would not be able to rise 9 feet. The possibility of this happening was very small. Qin Hao could tell from his aura that Chang Helou was still quite a distance away from 4th level Emperor realm. Therefore, it was impossible for him to rise 9 feet. Rise! Chang Helou didn't believe it. His cultivation had already surpassed Yu Qianyang's. If it wasn't for the sword sect Showuk, he would be ranked 2nd among the rising stars of the southern region. How could he care about a golden bell? Golden flames rose. For a moment, Chang Helou's realm was fully activated. The pervasive vitality surged towards the golden bell. It was incomparably intense, as if he was giving the golden bell a layer of flame. Under the support of his vitality, the golden bell rose another foot. 7 feet. Good job, senior brother. A disciple of the spirit beast sect shouted. Many members of a Xianyuan family were excited. If Chang Helou could really rise 9 feet, Qin Hao would definitely lose his life once he gave up the inheritance. This was equivalent to avenging Xianyuan Jie and Xianyuan Feng. It was simply too satisfying. However, rising the golden bell wasn't as easy as they had imagined. When the bell rose 7 feet and hung in the sky, the power of the great Tao fell from the sky and crushed Chang Helou's shoulder. His body suddenly sank down, and he felt as if there was a towering mountain above his head. It was endlessly heavy. He had no choice but to release his Guqin spirit to relieve the pressure. No, he couldn't continue to climb the golden bell. Chang Helou waved his arm, and light rippled under his palm. A Guqin with the color of sandalwood gradually formed. He sat on the ground, and his white and slender palm pressed on the strings. At this moment, his entire temperament changed, and he exuded a scholarly and elegant aura. Chang Helou plucked the strings with both hands, and the sound of the Guqin spread out. Waves of soul-stirring sound mixed into the vitality, and at the same time, surged into the sky, lifting the solemn golden bell. It rose another foot from 7 feet. 8 feet. Amazing. The martial artists on the golden bell platform were shocked. Another monster who could rise 8 feet. At this moment, Chang Helou's playing speed became faster and faster. The strings jumped wildly, and the dense sound of the Guqin was like a storm. The attacks hit the golden bell, and waves of dang-dang sound spread from the golden bell. The sound of the Guqin spread and enveloped the entire platform. The martial artists were immersed in the sound of the Guqin, and all kinds of images appeared in their minds uncontrollably. Thousands of beasts ran together, all-encompassing, and ancient gods stood in the void. The terrifying images swallowed the martial artist's will. Many people could not resist, and their hands covered their ears as they struggled frantically. At this moment, the golden bell shone brightly. In the haze, everyone seemed to see a divine Buddha sitting cross-legged in the sky, with his palms together, and a solemn chant of the great path was heard. It was as if he wanted to enlighten the entire martial arts world. The incomparably obscure chant turned into countless Buddhist scriptures that floated down. The golden scriptures merged into the sound of the guqin, constantly weakening the power of the guqin. Thousands of beasts were driven away, breaking through the heavens and fighting the ancient gods. Changha Lo's white hair swayed, and the Sanskrit sound entered his ears. Thousands of Buddhist monks appeared in his mind, and many of them changed their positions, pulling out after-images and interfering with his heart of the guqin. For a moment, Changha Lo's mind was broken. His palms on the guqin stopped, and blood spurted out. Phew! Yu Qinyong breathed a sigh of relief. He thought that Changha Lo could really break the barrier of 8 feet, but it seemed that he was still a little short. Even though Changha Lo's failure did not benefit Yu Qinyong, on the contrary, it benefited Qin Hao. But why did he feel so carefree at this moment? Eldest brother, Changha Lo, the disciples of the Lingshou clan and the Xianyuan clan were nervous. Was it really that difficult? I could still do it. Changha Lo breathed heavily. His white robe was soaked with sweat. His telekinesis entered his spatial ring, and he took out an imperial instrument, guqin. He placed it on the guqin spirit, and the guqin spirit overlapped with the imperial instrument, gradually becoming one. The soul weapon fused. Zhong Sheng Jiu Qi, open your eyes and watch carefully. With his white hair fluttering in the wind, Changha Lo was like a madman who was obsessed with music. He began to play even faster. After the fusion of the soul weapons, the sound produced by the zither had become even stronger. Its destructive power had become even more ferocious. Under the destruction of the zither music, a series of sonic booms could be heard. The crazy sound of the guqin surged towards the golden bell. Even the Buddha could not suppress it. The raging sound waves pushed the bell upwards like a tidal wave. Although the speed was very slow, it gradually broke through the 8 feet distance. Inch by inch, it continued to climb. It looked like the bell was about to reach 9 feet. Brother, this guy is using an imperial instrument. Xiaogu could not sit still anymore. If he had known earlier, he would have taken out the Qinghuan demon subduing pestle. The power of the pestle would definitely be stronger than the power of a fist. However, at this moment, Changha Lo's soul had fused and the bell was rising inch by inch. For Qin Hao, who had made a promise, it was not optimistic. Qin Hao, it seems that you have miscalculated. Shouwuk looked at him. There was no trace of worry in his expression. Perhaps, Qin Hao said casually. Chapter 14:12. On the Golden Bell platform, Qin Hao gave up the inheritance of the great emperor. If he could not reach 9 feet, Changha Lo would destroy himself. And this self-destruction did not specify the abolition of one's cultivation. Now he had cut off the pieces of his clothes and sent them to Qin Hao, which was a hidden sarcasm, causing many warriors to laugh at him. Is it funny? A person who praised himself for reaching 9 feet not only did not do it, but also slapped himself in the face. He is also shameless and untrustworthy. Who is the funny one? Qin Hao looked around, and all the warriors lowered their heads. Obviously, everyone present agreed that the two sides had agreed to destroy themselves. Of course, it was their cultivation that was destroyed. In short, I have fulfilled my promise. Whether you recognize it or not, it's up to you. Now I am fully qualified to enter the Divine Palace and become an official disciple of the Divine Palace. Do you dare to kill the people of the Divine Palace? Changha Lo chuckled, relying on the Divine Palace, and then said, On the other hand, you, Qin Hao, have not fought and have not obtained the qualifications to enter the Divine Palace. What right do you have to criticize me? If you have the ability, challenge me once to see. The warriors on the Golden Bell platform were silent. Changha Lo's words seemed to make some sense. If Qin Hao couldn't reach the level of 9 feet, but used this as a standard to force others to cripple themselves, no one would be willing to accept it. Wuk, Qin Hao spoke. Shouwuk stepped forward and walked towards the Golden Bell. His palm landed on the ground, and an incomparably vigorous palm force slammed down. The raging power surged, and with a hum, the golden bell rose from the ground and soared 8 feet. As a peerless swordsman, Sho Wuck's vitality was obviously stronger than his strength. He beat the drum with force, and his sword pierced through 8 sides. After that, he gathered the rules of sword intent and struck 9 times. At this time, standing on the golden bell platform, it was no exaggeration to say that the golden bell rose 8 feet with one palm strike. Of course, from Qin Hao's point of view, Sho Wuck's performance was normal. However, to the other martial artists, this scene was extremely shocking. Even Yu Qianyang and Sho Wuck couldn't help but widen their eyes. Wasn't the gap too big? Sho Wuck smiled faintly. Lotus sword chi bloomed from the bottom of his feet and accumulated layer by layer. Then, beams of sword chi rose into the air and poured into the golden bell. The golden bell let out a series of loud, clashing noises that sounded like the clashing of swords and sabers. The sound of Sanskrit chanted. Above the void, boundless Buddhist power spread out. A Buddha that was 10 feet tall appeared. His huge Buddha palm pressed down heavily. Countless Buddhist runes flew out, trying to suppress the sword chi below. Sho Wuck did not give him the chance to do so. The lotus sword chi under his feet gathered layer by layer, forming a majestic sword chi of the Monarch will. He pointed out with his finger, and the sword chi rose into the sky, shattering the Buddhist scriptures above. The sword chi pierced through the Buddha's palm and into the Buddha's body. There was a loud thud. The Buddhist light that filled the sky dissipated, and a golden bell materialized. It was 8 feet above the ground, and it swayed wildly as it flew upwards. 9 feet, more than 9 feet, 10 feet, 11 feet, 12 feet. The speed of its ascent suddenly stopped. It turned into a golden ray of light and fell down. The power shook the entire golden bell platform. At this time, thousands of cultivators were covered in cold sweat. That's too abnormal. Zhou Wudao involuntarily shouted. 12 feet. This was Sho Wuck's result. It was more than 9 feet. He's really too strong. Xiaoba was also deeply shocked. He, who had been suppressed by the 9 emperors, deeply felt the gap between him and Sho Wuck. This was the terrifying strength that only a genius who had been tested by the emperor's statues could possess. You're really powerful. No wonder you're the #1 genius of the southern region. But what does that have to do with you, Qin Hao? Don't you feel embarrassed to let Sho Wuck do it for you? Chang Halo said. On the battle drum platform, Sho Wuck's sword sounded 9 times, achieving a perfect result. Chang Halo thought that he could also achieve a perfect result on the golden bell platform. However, it turned out that he couldn't achieve 9 feet and had greatly underestimated Sho Wuck's strength. The genius from the southern region's Sword Emperor clan had the reputation of being unparalleled in the way of the sword. His flawless head had actually risen by 12 feet. Such a result was simply enough to suppress Yu Qianyang and Chang Halo. Genius? What was a true genius? However, this had nothing to do with Qin Hao. The person who had risen 12 feet was Sho Wuck. Chang Halo, I challenge you to a duel. That's fine, but you're a weakling who was forced back to your original position by the 7 emperors. What qualifications do you have to challenge me? You asked me to raise the bell, so I did it. Who gave you face? Qin Hao looked straight at Chang Halo. He could challenge him to a duel. Chang Halo wanted Qin Hao to raise the bell, but he wasn't qualified. Let's go. Qin Hao strode towards the stone platform, and the group followed him. Next, there was no need to continue watching the golden bell platform. With Zhou Wudao and Zhang Ye's natural talent, even if they weren't as outstanding as Sho Wuck, it wasn't a problem for them to rise 9 feet. It was indeed so. After Qin Hao left, Zhou Wudao and Zhang Yi challenged one after another, and their results were perfect. Chapter 14:13. At this moment, Feng Qinli was the first to make a move. His gaze swept across the 10 stone statues. The warriors who were about to challenge him subconsciously retreated, leaving the arena to him. Although there were 10 stone statues in total, It was almost impossible for someone to achieve resonance with 10 of them at the same time. The web updates were the fastest on the computer. However, those who were extremely talented had the ability to communicate with 7 or 8 statues. Previously, Qin Yun and the others had achieved this step. At that time, the other warriors who tried to communicate with the stone statues failed miserably. It was not that they were not capable, but that Qin Yun and the others' soul power was too strong. Their powerful telekinesis had cut off the other warriors from the stone statues. To prevent similar situations from happening again, it was necessary to avoid the talented ones. Feng Qinli faintly emitted a powerful sword intent. At first glance, it was obvious that he was not to be trifled with. No one dared to provoke him. Standing in the arena, Feng Qinli's sharp eyes seemed to shoot out a terrifying sword light into one of the stone statues. Then he closed his eyes. The surging soul power wreaked havoc and enveloped the stone statue. Almost instantly, everyone saw that the stone statue that was hit by the sword light glowed with a sword light. The light completely engulfed the stone statue, and a sword made of light appeared in its position. Amazing. He communicated with the first stone statue in an instant. The light turned into a sword. And this person is full of energy. I guess he communicated with at least 6 statues. Fortunately, we did not make a move just now. Many warriors trembled in fear as they discussed, especially those who had challenged the stone statues before. They knew how difficult it was to achieve Feng Qinli's level, but he did it in a breath. It was terrifying. And this was only the first stone statue's elemental light. An even more ferocious sword will exploded. The aura from Feng Qinli's position became sharper and sharper. Another beam of sword light pierced into another stone statue. In the next second, the stone statue that was flashing with lightning suddenly turned into a sharp sword surrounded by lightning. He had successfully communicated with the second statue. Next, the sword of wind, the sword of flame, and the sword made of vines appeared one after another. In the blink of an eye, 7 peerless swords circled and hung in the air. They emitted a powerful sword aura, causing many warriors to be shocked. Everything in the world had different elemental attributes. It was the same for primordial spirits. Finding a stone statue that was most compatible with one's elemental attribute was undoubtedly the most successful. But in front of a peerless genius, there were no restrictions.